To hear, able to hear Raquel?
Hello, I am speaking.
Cannot hear Raquel. Um,
Oh no, you can't hear me.
okay. I know that you were able to. Okay, Raquel, I know you're able to be heard in this stream. I just don't know if you're going to be able to be heard in the
If
call-in
you
room.
know,
I'm gonna
it
try.
might
Yeah.
just not be meant to be tonight. It is kind of a mess tonight. I could
Okay.
definitely come back some other day when the stars align a little bit better and
No, because
I'm
I
a
know
little more
they can definitely
prepared.
hear you in the Rumbles feed. I know that for a fact. I'm gonna try one thing just really quickly. It may make an ugly sound. It may not. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
All right. Uh, yeah, you know what? If I do try it, I know it's going to cause terrible feedback. All right,
Ooh.
Raquel. Sorry, it may not work.
Oh, that's okay. You tried. I appreciate that.
Tried my absolute best. Well, next time, come back.
Yeah, next time.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
No,
gonna
I'm a real big
sign
fan of.
off.
No, I'm a huge fan of your stuff, and I really wanted to have
Thank you
this
very much.
conversation. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Well, take
okay, I'm
care.
gonna leave the call to get my
All good.
well, that's okay, don't worry, some other time, I hope. Anyway,
Sounds
I'll
good.
sign off. Take
Yeah. Have a
care.
good
Have a good
night.
one.
Bye now. Yeah. Sorry about that, guys. I tried my best over here. Tried my level best. Okay. Yeah, it's all good. Yeah.
Or whatever. It's just I don't really see the utility in having a
Oh, yeah, go ahead. It's funny to say. It's funny how you say we have an actual caller. Like we don't normally get. Oh shit, we have an actual caller. Oh my god. Hey, how you doing, man? Yeah. Oh. Oh, that's fine. I mean, that had nothing to do with what we're talking about, but that's okay. I'll answer the question anyway. That's all good. It's all good. No. Okay. So you didn't have to drop out. I was just giving you shit. I do that to people. Sorry. I didn't. I wasn't. I hope you didn't think that was actually mad or something. No. So in doing my history masters, I kind of got sidetracked and accidentally, but on purpose, did a family genealogy and found out where in West Africa my family came from. And the more research I was doing on uh, slave rebellions in the Caribbean, slave rebellions in the rebellions in the Americas generally, but also finding out like what my family's ancestral history was, it made it really difficult for me to, I don't know, like it's just I don't know, this is really hard for people to understand, I think, but like um, I'm not one of those people that says I consider myself a very spiritual person, although I am spiritual, but it's not like in a sort of like a woo woo vague sense, but in the sense that like my older brother is an Aberrisha, like I myself hold to um like I hold myself to West African traditions and so on. And doing all that and at the same time going by an anglicized name, it just didn't really hold integrity for me. So I took a name that I mean it's not hard to figure out what it is, but it took a name that was like a West African name that was like in like native to the Yukon people. So my ancestors were Yukons before they were captured and sold to slavers in Barbados and then to Jamaica. So I took a Yukon first name. I kept my middle name because that's the name my mother really wanted me to have. So I kept the middle name. And when I got married, I took my wife's last name. So that's where the Q is like the first initial of the traditional Akan name. Anthony is my middle name, and Omeni is my married name. What do you call that? When you get married and you have a name, you take your spouse's name. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no. So I know it was like a bit of a change for people, but I mean, I agreed with my now wife back when we were engaged. I agreed with her maybe like a month or so afterwards because we were having a conversation about whether we were like who's going to change the name and so on. And she said, "Well, would you take my name?" And I was like, "Yeah." Like, I don't have any problem with that. I don't think that I don't have any like issue with taking your name. I just wanted us all to have the same name. I didn't want you to have your name and me to have my name, and our kids would have like a hyphenated name. I think we should just have a family name. So she's like, "Well, in that case, would you take my name?" And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "I'll hold you to it." All right, I'll do that. Like, I'm not wedded to any notions as to who's supposed to take whose name. I just wanted our family to have the same name. Hope that answers your question. Yeah. YouTube people can't hear you? Oh, they should be able to. That's weird. She can't hear you? Oh. Okay. She should be able to now.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, we have Andy if he wants to give us a.
Hi, I'm Andy. Am I unmuted?
Oh no, you're
Can you hear
good. We
me?
can hear you.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Hey, man. I just figured if you guys were opening it up, well, I have one thing. T, like I really enjoyed. I think a long time ago you were talking about looking at right-wing media for like the death rates of trans people versus black men. I think you did a live stream where you talked about that. And
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if the guy was right
was it
wing,
that
but
or was it the
he,
Obama
he
thing? I can't. Sorry, yeah.
it's fine. It's fine.
But that was actually one of the first times that kind of like crossed my mind. Like that there are some issues where like right wing media is more. I don't know if honest is the right word, but like objective. I don't know. Anyway, but
It's critical. It's critical. Yeah.
Yeah,
or
that's a
like,
good. That's a good word.
or I guess yeah, even just like deals with any amount of like data or anything. You know what I mean? Like it feels like a lot of times like whatever you call like general media, it's like there's just no data. It's just kind of like thoughts, you know, or whatever, or feelings or whatever. But I was actually thinking. I mean, I don't know. I know Gawker is back like now, but I used to work like out of college and grad school. I worked office jobs a lot, so I read a lot of Gawker. Like I guess between 2000 and God, I don't know, like 2005 to 2010 or something, you know? And I kind of feel like weirdly that era of Gawker, I mean, this was definitely was anomalous. This didn't happen a lot, but they sometimes actually would do sort of a similar, like things would sneak through where there would be some kind of real reporting that other media wouldn't do. And the one thing that really jumped to mind is this is after 2008, I think, but this guy Nick Bryant that I think used to write for Rolling Stone did a bunch of stuff about Jeffrey Epstein's flight logs, and he did the best.
They would have a lot of
that.
great reporting at times.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like I don't know. I mean, I think I don't know what it's like now, you know, but I feel like that was kind of an interesting thing that it was like because they were this gossip site, they were sort of willing to like buck some of the whatever. And then the last thing I wanted to say, this might just be like shoehorning it in, but when this topic came up, this is just something I think about like all the time, and I was just kind of curious to see what you think about it. Is like I was young, so I wasn't really there when this was happening, but like when Gary Webb was reporting the like Dark Alliance stories in the San Jose Mercury News,
Yeah.
and then when later on, like I read that book, and I mean that book just like blew my mind. I mean, completely blew my mind. And I often think about how like it would just be there's no avenue for any kind of story like that. Like it's almost like that will never happen again. Like I could almost like a story like that being reported. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, I know what you mean. I feel like there has to be something, but I feel like it must be harder to find. I mean, I know local news is getting gutted in general in so many places, but yeah, I mean that's a good question. Like, does anybody on the
and
panel
to
live in
go
a
in to
place?
be able to go that in depth
Yeah,
on a story of that kind of magnitude that would kind of really involve so many powerful players, like I just don't think I think because of the shifts in media that you guys are talking about, like it just and then I guess the thing that I sort of wonder about that is like how does that change like how we as like a population, like are there just now going to be things about what's really happening that we just will never know? I don't know, it's kind of messes with my head a little bit. So yeah, that's just something I wanted to throw out there.
here's one example I was thinking about when you were talking. There was all this stuff happening, and someone shared this with me. All this stuff happening with Nestle and M&Ms, and is the green M&M a slut? And all these like weird listicle stuff about that. Have you guys heard
Hey, T.
He isn't good for her.
T. I got something to show you, bro. I got something to show you. And we can't share pictures in the private chat too. But okay, do you all know this picture? It's a very popular meme. It's a blonde white girl, Piper Perry, and she's sitting on a white couch with a bunch of like black dudes surrounding. Yeah, okay. So somebody made up that picture, and it's like Tucker Carlson with all of the different colored M&Ms on the couch behind, or standing behind him on the couch. Yeah.
But yeah, like so everybody, all these sites, supposed news sites, were like, what do you think about the green M&M wearing sneakers instead of shoes? And then the right wing guys were like, oh, the left is against femininity and SJWs are doing this. And then there were all these articles about like, who are the 10 best M&Ms and toxic masculinity. And it
Oh
was, it
my
was like every
god.
angle. And then someone sent me a story, said, hey, did you see this story? And Nestle is facing this lawsuit over child slavery. Uh, I think Nestle might make M&Ms or
Mars, Nestle and
owns the
Mars are
company.
facing the lawsuit
Yeah, Nestle,
over like
Nestle and Mars,
cocoa
and
farming
Mars is the
in
one that
Central
owns
Africa.
M&M.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm okay. Mars has child slavery. This thing has been happening since June 2021, and I didn't hear anything about this. But this green M&M thing has been like all over the place, and I get it for like blogs and stuff like that. But even in major newspapers, I feel like they've been having all this lifestyle stuff over the stupid M&M character makeovers, and like that's just another example I think about just how ridiculous like the coverage has gotten. But the thing is, even when mainstream media like would drop the ball, I used to be able to pick up like something like the Village Voice or follow a bunch of online alternative sites and just kind of see this stuff. And I feel like it's harder and harder to do. You have to really actively kind of look.
Yeah, there's like mid-size sites, kind of like large small blogs or small medium-sized blogs. You're not going to get anything the size of like BuzzFeed that's going to cover this stuff. So maybe later, maybe if it gets popular with more smaller independent sites, maybe it'll eventually jump. But I know that both your all's podcast and my magazine are part of a group called Opt Out. And I definitely see other sites in that network, like David Sirota's The Daily Poster, posting things that are much more skeptical and are covering stories that aren't going to get featured in larger outlets until much later, if at all. And I think a big part of it is, I don't know if the caller is still on, but he mentioned Gawker in like the early 2000s. That was how they got popular, was the fact that they were covering all this stuff that people weren't willing to cover, and maybe it wasn't
Shit that actually mattered, stuff that people cared about.
Exactly, yeah. And then once they became, I forget when they were bought by a private equity fund. I want to say they were rolled up into a larger network around like 2012, and then I think it was around 2015 or 2016 when the actual like court settlement came down and they went bankrupt. But they're all those sites now are owned by large private equity companies that really don't care about anything except for them as as like an ad platform. So they don't actually care about trying to establish a voice or produce good articles. They're literally just trying to get views. They don't actually care what the where the views come from. I think I looked it up earlier, and most of the former Gawker sites that are mostly now owned by like Univision, I think they all get like 10 million views a month. So they're doing okay. It's so from like a capital point of view, they have nothing to complain about. But that need to grow was fulfilled by covering the the more aggressive stories, and you're only going to get that from smaller outlets that need to differentiate themselves now, I think.
Something else with Gawker too, like they had a very specific tone that was very snarky and acidic. And to be honest, I kind of got sick of that tone. Like it was everywhere. It was called the snark era, and everyone's commenting in the 2000s with snark and whatever. And like for people who don't know, like snark is a portmanteau. Is that what you no, or I don't know what you call it, but it's snide remark. It's a
I didn't know
combination of
that.
two.
Oh man, I had no idea.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, I was told that. Maybe I know someone's lying to me, but I was told a snark is a portmanteau of snide remark. Even if it's not officially how it was created, that is the best definition, I think, for it. But I will take that any day over what the smarm that has kind of replaced it, and the fake semi sister girl, semi 4chan type of language that like adults are using, you know, kind of like hey girl, 5 times so and so was serving up looks, you know, and it's about like
Oh
the Supreme
God.
Court. It's like, why are you writing
No,
about the Supreme
you know what
Court?
it is? No, what they do now is
Like what? You know,
start.
and it'll be
No, I
like
was
a
gonna say
serious
they
topic, and they'll just be having this weird way of talking, and then you look at the person who wrote it, and it's like some like white girl who looks like she has a Michael Kors watch and just graduated college. I'm like, why are you talking like a drag queen? I don't understand where this is coming from. Like, is this what journalism school is teaching you? But everything writes like BuzzFeed now, and it drives me nuts. There was a story in the New York Times about hot cartoon dads, and you know, like dads they want to
Oh God.
bang in the
Yeah.
style section, and everybody gets on the op-ed section because of like the right wingers in there and whatever. But the stuff happening in the style section, I think, is equally as offensive, but from like a progressive viewpoint. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I was gonna
Like I
say.
saw in this.
No, I was
Yeah,
gonna
go ahead.
say that there's a couple of things that like that this trend brought that I hate. One is when you say like the smarmy sister girl thing. Have you noticed that everybody begins sentences with like when they are going to make a declarative statement, they say
Y'all.
they say not you, not you being a patriarch.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not something. I hate that. That's the worst. That's the
yeah,
worst Twitterism.
I
I
hate
hate
that
that.
so
Not
much.
so and so.
Yeah,
Not
as
this.
like you're simply making a state. Just say what it is you want to say. Like, you, like they
It's so.
when you put the not in front of it, it makes it sound like, oh my god, this is so insufferable. It's the worst thing in the world. Not this thing happening. You know.
That and I've seen this on like BuzzFeed type articles. Like it's the something for me. That's another
Yeah,
annoying
it's
thing
the
that people always
blank
say.
for me.
Yeah.
You know, or it's
Nobody.
giving,
Nope.
which is like ballroom talk. You know what I mean? Like when you say like, oh, it's giving, toxic masculinity
Yeah,
or
it's
whatever.
giving. That's another one.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, when you say it's giving, you're supposed to say something like so cutting that it makes the other person want to cry, right?
Yeah.
So if you're talking about like I don't know, like a person's apparel or something, you say like, it's giving Princess Backup Band
Salvation Army
Shalimar.
vibes or something.
Yeah. Like it's supposed to really hurt their feelings, but when you say like it's giving, and then you just say something like, "Oh, so this is the thing that you're gonna like expected to come out of your mouth." It's giving toxic masculinity, or it's giving like it's giving pick me. Like just call the person the pick me. Why the fuck are you saying it's giving? Like who cares?
Yeah, everything is like somebody's is wants to be on RuPaul's Drag Race, but doesn't even understand the slang. It's
Yeah.
very just weird. Hirotu, what's going on, man?
Yo, what's good, everybody? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Yo,
yeah,
Yeah, we
yeah.
can
How
hear
you
you.
feeling? Yeah, can
Yeah,
hear
pretty
you
good.
great.
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, this is a really great talk. It's kind of reminds me of I don't know if this site's problematic or anything, but Cracked. I used to read that back in the day, and they used
Oh
to have
yeah, yeah.
like
Cracked was great,
they
actually.
used to
No,
always make me laugh
no,
when
Cracked
they'd
was
post it.
great. The
Yeah.
problem was apparently like behind the scenes, it was just like an abuse factory. Like,
Oh wow.
yeah, a
Oh,
lot of
that
former Cracked
sucks.
writers were like, yeah, like those are kinds of like workplace like bullying and inappropriate conversations. At least two of the
Oh, that
writers that I
sucks.
know of were just like straight up sex pests.
Mm.
Yeah, one of them like was like hanging out in women writers DMs and saying really inappropriate shit. But I will say some of the material that came out of Craft was funny as fuck.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I remember like I would learn like that's why 'cause I would laugh and learn. It was like really I found it like really engaging, and I was especially for like being in my 20s. I thought it was a really good way to start conversations. And also I've been gaming my whole life. I don't really consider myself a part of the gaming culture, but a lot of this stuff I kind of noticed in gaming media, like a lot of the people that were reporting on games or talking about games, like they weren't a
We
part
have a
of the
gamer
scene.
gator in our midst.
Yeah, yeah. um, Yeah, like like I kind of felt like if you're gonna write about games, like you should play them, or you should like have like I think we talk about this in the Champagne Sharks Discord, but like gatekeeping isn't necessarily bad. And this when you were talking about like reporting or giving critiques and stuff. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there, like, and I think that kind of connected what he was talking about, like people talking like drag queens or the sister talk, whatever, but not like don't even know where it comes from or not a part of the
Yeah, not part of the
the
culture.
subculture.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think subculture doesn't exist anymore because there's everything's online now, so it's really hard to have these kinds of subcultures. So I can't really blame young people for it, but I do kind of blame millennials for like basically capitalizing on subculture and kind of
No,
ruining it.
it
But
was.
I don't know.
I think it was a lot of
Yeah, that's all. But
millennials.
thanks. I'll shut up now.
No,
But
no,
thank
no,
you.
no, no. I think you're onto something here. I don't know that I would say it was that they were trying to capitalize per se. I think they were trying to show their employers how cool and down they were by introducing them to subculture slang that their peers, coworkers, employers would then carry into their own social media thing. Like, hey, I'm cool. I'm down with black people. Or I'm down with LGBTQ people. Look what they taught me. So they're using it as like a cultural shibboleth to show that they're
Mhm.
like they're not only part of the milieu, or sorry, they're not only an ally, but they're an actual part of the milieu. So they'd use it as like a, I'm thinking of like a like a 1940s crime movie where like somebody goes up to the back door of a speakeasy and then somebody slides open like the eye hole, and they say the secret word and they let them in. Yeah, I think that's what like this subculture language is. Is like it's like you gave the person the password to let them in the back door so that they can also be
Mhm.
cool and enjoy it. But then it just ends up becoming the mainstream, and then people start to fucking hate it.
There's also,
But
I think,
also, oh, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say, there's also way more people that want to read about and feel like they're connected to a subculture than are actually part of a subculture. And I always think about, my dad was, probably, I guess he was probably like 24, 25 at the height of like the hippie, era. And he would always talk about how, if you look at media about that era, they portray it as if everybody was a hippie. And in actuality, he said, he only knew like a couple of hippies. Most people were just kind of regular people who were maybe interested in it. And I think the same is true of subcultures now, where people want to feel like they're connected to a particular subculture, whatever it may be. And there's way more people who want to feel connected to it than actually are. So if you can find somebody who can seem as I love that Q said, a shibboleth, because I think it's exactly correct. If you can find someone who knows the language, even if they're not really part of or connected to the subculture, but they can appear that way to people who want to read about it, that's just as good to them. But over time, it winds up eroding the actual subculture.
I think something that happens too is that it's bad enough, even if you know what you're talking about, to become the subculture whisperer to the mainstream. Like I think that's in itself kind of a bad thing at times, because it leads like a watering down of culture, etc. But I think something that makes it doubly bad is that you have a lot of people who don't even understand or are even qualified to do the subculture, right?
That reminds me of
And they're
just
going to
like
be the ones, and I think that's where you get those mistakes like what Q was talking about, where it's like, okay, you're not even using this stuff right, like
You
this misuse
know which one I
words
see a
all
lot?
the time. And
No,
that,
the one I see a
there's a
lot
good
is
Frank Zappa.
you ever see people say face card? Like I see people say face card a lot, then they'll post a picture of their face. And it's like that's not what face card means. Face card doesn't mean you have a nice face. Face card means people recognize you. Like, so you go to like this neighborhood or you hang out at this nightclub or whatever, and people know you just by face, so they'll let you in. Or like they recognize you in this neighborhood and they're like, they'll give you love. Like, it doesn't mean that you have a pretty face or you have a handsome face.
or how about a real popular one on the left, simp, and on
Oh my god.
4chan,
Oh
Yeah.
simp
my
has just
god,
become
bro.
something
Oh my
totally
god,
Yeah.
man. It's
Simp
all over the
simp
place.
just
Like
means you're
humans
nice
use it
to
all
a
the
woman.
time. Yeah.
yeah.
And
But
another one was Stan from the Eminem. Like nobody even knew where that came from. And
One time somebody told me that they were tired of how New York is simping for Andrew Cuomo when he was really popular
What?
during the pandemic,
Oh my
and,
god.
that was the worst use of it. I saw, but something I was thinking about was a Key and Peele bit, and the show in general wasn't particularly funny, but this one bit I thought was pretty accurate. They were talking about how both of them were the token black people at their schools, and all the white kids would think that they were so cool, but they didn't really know black culture that well. But everything they did, like at the school dance, whatever, everybody would be. And actually, they did an actual skit about this too, where one token shows up, but then a second one shows up, and they're both like worried the other one's going to expose them as being inauthentic. But I feel like that person is the culture whisperer now, like the person who is like, okay, these people don't know, so I can tell them anything, and they're gonna eat it. They're gonna eat it up, these editors, and so you kind of have like the blind leading the blind. I feel like there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah. There's I don't know, it's pretty popular clip, but Frank Zappa talks about like the decline of the music business or something. And I think it's kind of connected to this. Like before, it was a bunch of old people just randomly trying to find the next, not even next hot thing, but just like young people, and then the next generation comes along who thinks that they're cool and thinks that they're a part of this subculture, and then they start to cultivate what they think is cool, and it's kind of it goes downhill from there. I don't know if anybody has seen that short clip.
No, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that one. Is it on YouTube?
Yeah, I put it in the Discord. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
It's,
Cool.
I mean,
Also,
it sounds totally correct. Like I remember, in the '90s, I was real invested in trying to be punk. But my only actual connection to like punk was like going to the record store and buying like Punk-O-Rama CDs. Like I didn't really know any other punks. My only exposure to the punk subculture was through music, and I might know like one guy, but I was very mentally invested in trying to be punk. And I knew a lot of people like that, and we would argue all the time about like what was and wasn't punk, and we didn't fucking know what punk was. We didn't know any punks. We were kind of like making it up as we went along. So
Yeah.
whatever we thought it was I'm sure completely wrong from what it actually meant, 5 or 10 years, previously.
What's
but
wild is that
picture.
have you noticed that people now regard Avril Lavigne as a punk goddess?
Yeah,
And I remember when Avril Lavigne came out, I was like, "What the fuck is this?" Like,
he
this
was
is
phony. Yeah,
yeah.
obviously, and like nothing against her personally, but we hated her. Or I hear that about like emo, like what people talk about as being emo now is like unrecognizable to me. Not that I was ever
Oh my
especially into
god.
it.
Yeah, that is the worst, man. Emo. It's completely different from what it was in the night. Like,
But the
yeah,
thing is,
it's
even
so
emo
different.
back then, like you used to pick on emo kids. Emo was not cool at all. Like if you
Yeah,
were an emo
Yeah.
kid, you were bottom of the barrel.
But the thing with the whole punk thing is, like, you guys would know what you're talking about, whatever. But nowadays, you can get totally hired to be an expert. Like the editors today would have given you guys a call.
oh
Like
totally.
no problem. like no one is able
Because I can name
to
Dead
vet
Kennedys
anybody on
tracks. Yeah.
anything. Yeah, it's pretty funny. And we're talking about the Buzzfeedification of media, but I think also the Tumblr side of it. But it's kind of weird to say that because BuzzFeed itself absorbs so many Tumblrisms that it's almost like redundant at this point to say BuzzFeed and Tumblr, because they do a lot of the same stuff, but this kind of excessively fawning, like so and so appeared on Jimmy Fallon last night and was serving up looks. And it's just like, an article. I'm like, why is this even an article? And you look at it and it's 15 gifs with one sentence under each gif. And I'm like, you have to be pissed off that you went to journalism school and got like a 6-figure debt so that you can
to go
post
post gifts
gifts
about
for a
Jimmy
living.
Fallon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
I
talk
get
show.
I
Yeah,
get pissed
yeah.
off for the opposite reason, man. I get really annoyed when I see I like put like a 4,000, 5,000 word article out that's taking me like 3 or 4 days, and I get like 20,000 views. And then someone does a list of like 20 GIFs and it trends on Twitter and they get like millions of views. I'm like, gee, what am I doing this for? Like, what's the point, man?
I think a lot of people must feel that way, right? And then you know what I was thinking about that? Well, I was thinking about like, hey, you know what? The person who's actually still in the muck doing the articles, it's gonna work out for them because they're building a craft, and that person who's just doing listicles is going to have like whatever writing skills they had like atrophy. But as time goes on, start realizing it's not gonna matter if no one could read. Like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how well you hone your writing craft if you inherit a world where no one can actually even have the attention span to read anymore. So maybe the listicle people are gonna be the ones thriving in the future. Like they're not gonna be able to string 3 sentences together, but in a world where no one can read 3 sentences in a row without their eyes glazing over, they're gonna like inherit the earth, and which is an even scarier thought to me.
It hurts to say this, but the Freddie DeBoer column that you sent me was spot on the money. Is that people don't know how to read anymore, and I feel it affecting me now. Like I feel when I start reading long articles, I can feel my attention slipping away. That I'm looking for something else to do, or I have an opinion about it, so let me go tweet something or whatever. Like I feel those impulses, and the thing is, like a lot of people aren't self-aware enough to know that they can't read and they can't synthesize ideas into something interesting for someone else to consume or think about. It's just grind out like your surface level thoughts on any particular thing, and that's good enough to make an article. You don't have to take steps 2, 3, and 4. So, I mean, to take it back to where we were or where we started the topic, that's why I think a lot of cultural criticism ends up in the hands like a lot of the beyond step 2 cultural criticism ends up being dished out by the reactionaries because they don't have access to these media. Like they're not generally getting bylines, and when they are, they're in like fringe publications or at least publications associated with the right wing. So they have time to sit around and ponder like what is it that's so wrong with this culture, and most of the time they come to bad conclusions, but you can tell they've put in the effort not only to do their homework, but also
Totally.
to synthesize what they've learned into something that's worth reading.
Totally.
I mean,
they get I think it comes back to the fact of them doing adversarial readings of a lot of stuff. Like if you're pissed off by an article, you'll read it way closer than somebody who just generally agrees with it. In my opinion, like I found that when we've had an article that goes really viral, the comments that we get that are actually the most insightful, or at least show that someone actually read it, are usually from the most reactionary places. I don't know if anybody is familiar with Hacker News. It's like a very like tech libertarian, like Silicon Valley website. We've had a couple articles that went really viral on there. They actually sit down and read the article. They may be wrong in their conclusions, but you can tell that they actually really closely read it, and they call out real specific things. Whereas, you know, the reactions that we get from kind of just like the general, you know, like Twitter liberal, they may not have even read past the headline. And like it's not that they're going to give a good synthesis, but they're actually going to read it. Even
not only do they not read past the headline, they will tell you, "I didn't even read this article," or "I didn't watch this movie," or "I didn't listen to this song," or "I didn't watch this." People would say, "I didn't watch Dave Chappelle's comedy special," and then have an opinion on it. Like,
wait, not just have an opinion, have a printed article. Like an editor paid you to write an article where you announced in the beginning of the article that you didn't read it for moral, that you didn't watch it for moral reasons. And I was like, why would an editor pay you for this?
Yeah, it's
it blows my mind.
Like them exposing themselves to a piece of media or some ideas, like a piece of writing or anything. Like if they expose themselves to a thing that they don't like, it's going to leave a permanent negative psychological imprint on them, which is where people get to this
everybody's
weird, like,
very fragile.
Yeah.
Everyone's very fragile now, and that fragility is also why you have to write the way you do. Like you have to write in this cotton candy way all the time.
The weaponized helplessness.
Or God forbid, someone is not informed in 5 seconds.
Weaponized fragility. It's like people use the word emotional labor so fucking much now, and like they take it to mean I did work and I felt something that I didn't like. That's emotional labor. So I did labor and had emotions about it. When I was like, no, emotional labor was you have, as a service worker, you had to fake having a smile and liking your customer and making them feel welcome when they walked into your fast food joint. Or as an airline hostess, uh, you had to pretend like the asshole who ordered like his fourth martini and was getting increasingly impatient. You had to just stole your feelings about that person and give them service with a smile. So it's not just that you had to do your work, you had to do your work. And part of the corporate
Mhm.
culture was the fake feelings that you put on in front of the customer. Nobody is asking you to put on fake feelings for watching a comedy special that you don't like. As a matter of fact, you should give your genuine feelings about the comedy special you don't like. But now they're even saying, well, the fact that I had to expose myself to this information in the first place is so horribly traumatic that I should be paid just for the thought of, I should have to be paid for thinking about Dave Chappelle and then writing about him.
And, and,
I don't fucking understand it.
and you know, like people now use even emotional labor. Like the point of emotional labor was that this is not necessary to do the job. Like, why do I have to act like I'm your best friend to help you book your hotel room? Like, you know, and why do I have to like, be like, oh, I'm sorry that worked out. Oh, it didn't work out. Like why should I have to do that to do a job? But now people use emotional labor for things that are actually what you're supposed to be doing emotionally. What I mean by that is, um, someone was like, yeah, you know, I had to tell my friend I don't have the bandwidth right now for the emotional labor of hearing your problems. I'm like, wait, being able to listen to your friend's problems is not unnecessary emotional
Have you-
component of friendship. That's part of friendship. Like, what do you think friendship is? Or like, I see these articles where, like, you know, these women write, men demand emotional labor from their partners in terms of being the therapist. And I'm like, wait a second. Like, part of being in a relationship is, you know, hearing your partner's problems. Like,
You're
you might
supposed
say
to
like they
listen to your
overdo it or whatever, but it's
partner.
not emotional. There's a better word for that.
Yeah, the word is being
Has
in a
anyone-
relationship. Like, okay, T, does this happen to you? Because this happens to me a lot from my more liberal-minded friends, which is they'll ask to like talk to me about something, and it's like, oh, you know, I don't know enough about this particular issue, and then they'll talk to me about it, and I'll give them the information that they need, and so on, and then they'll say, you know, I'm sorry to put you through the emotional labor. This is something that I should know, but I'm like, you just asked me for information and I gave it to you willingly. You don't have to apologize for anything. Like I'm your friend. That's why we're friends. So that we do things for each other. And they're just like
Yeah,
acting
yeah.
so
I
I
mean,
don't
that's
and I'm
how it
thinking to
should
myself,
be.
but I'm not mad about it or whatever. I'm like, what the fuck are your other friends putting you through that you feel you have to do this with me? You know what I mean? Like it's not coming out of the blue. I kind of feel like they might have felt that they fucked up by not showing enough contriteness and deference talking to the other. I'm assuming that they're black friends because it's usually like stuff related to like black radical politics or black history and stuff like that, right? So they'll ask me and I'll let them know, and then they'll say, oh, sorry to put you through this, and so on and so on. I'm like, so I get the sense that you are talking to other, you're talking to like liberal minded black people that might know something more than you do and act like you asking for information that they have available and them giving it to you is some great and onerous burden that you as a white person should just like walk around rending your garments about. Like I and so on the one hand it's like it's annoying, but on the other hand I'm like, damn man, it's gotta be fucking rough out there right now.
Has anyone read
Oh,
there was a really good interview, so it was a really, really interesting interview in the Atlantic in 2018 where somebody went and talked to Arlie Hochschild, who you know originated the term emotional labor in I believe it was like a sociology study that she wrote. And they basically interviewed her about like what she thought of you know how the term was used now, and she was really clear that like if it's not part of the job that you're getting paid for, it's not labor, so it's not emotional labor. It was really interesting. She was trying to be very like equanimous about like you know people were using it to express some kind of like sincerely held emotional belief, but it's really interesting to hear her kind of grapple with, you know, the way that people were misusing her term, which she did, you know, like multiple books and studies on.
Oh, for sure. And I also want to get to Jason in the queue. He's been waiting very patiently. So Jason, feel free to unmute and also I'm gonna give a quick announcement for people in the audience or whatever. Feel free to tweet this out. Let people know that we're up in here, what the topic is, and get people in here for sure. But yeah, Jason, by all means, let her rip.
She was a skater boy, emotional labor boy.
Oh, God.
I don't even remember what I was gonna say because you went
Hey,
so many
somebody,
places.
hey, when this episode gets published, if y'all don't clip that shit, I'm gonna kick all of you out of the room. I'm banning you from the room.
No, you know, the panel was mostly giving me life until you anti-simped Avril. And then I felt myself undertaking significant emotional labor to cope. But no, you know, it's funny, man. You're going all around and you're touching sort of different things that intrigue me. One is, you know, as a couple of you know, I work in academia, and what you just brought up about the emotional labor, there was somebody in my department who reached out to me because she was excited about Amanda Gorman and Lynn Scamwell Miranda. And, you know, I explained to her that I had no interest in either of them, that I viewed them as mascots who were sort of performing a very impotent version of POC or whatever they call it now for white liberals that, you know, allowed them to feel the titillation of progress without making any investment in doing anything, you know? And so she says, well, can you explain to me so I can understand the problem with Amanda Gorman or Lynn Scamwell, at which point, you know, I thought, you know, again, about emotional labor. I was like, man, do I want to fucking do, like, why the fuck do I have to do? I got to write a long email right now. I got shit to do. I got class prep, you know, I'm thinking, before I could finish the thought, she had written another email. She's like, I want to deeply apologize for asking you as a Black person to explain this to me.
What?
And I was like, man, people have lost their shit here. But what you were saying about these about media, you know, and the root obviously speaks directly to an experience I had. I used to write here and there for the root. They had been bought by Univision. I think what is really interesting is because these places have become ad farms, and there's very little oversight. What it's left people with is the ability to run sort of grifts and pyramid schemes, and to promote their friends and to get this, you know, kind of milk to teat without anyone knowing while doing these kind of drag queen sort of girlfriend articles. One of my favorite ones ever was Nancy Pelosi, House Speaker or Congressional Gangster.
Oh my God! Oh shit! I remember
that
that
one.
Can we just
And
go
she
ahead?
got mad. And she got
Oh.
mad when people didn't like that article. I remember that author got really sassy. Was it Morgan Jerkins? Who I forgot who it was.
Her name is Monique Judge.
Was
And
it?
I remember it was MJ, and I said Morgan Jerkins, but yeah, Monique Judge. Yeah,
the piece begins, can we just go ahead and admit that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is officially the Suge Knight of Capitol Hill? Don't bother arguing with me. You know it's true. If you watched last night's State of the Union address, you saw the congressional OG show up with her gang in tow, wearing their colors and ready to drag your little president to hell if they needed to. It's so good. Man, it's such a brilliant parody.
No, you know what? I think
I'm going to tie it back to Harry Potter.
That article was actually very formative in my life because that's when that is when I absolutely there were a lot of like blue check Black liberals that I talked to that I was like still kind of cool with. And when they were just like praising that article and they thought it was so funny and they were like doing the cry laugh emojis, I was like, y'all are so fucking corny. Why do I like you? I don't understand. Like, this is weird. This is weird shit. I would never lower myself to do this. And I would never lower myself to laugh at it in public. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you know how like in those like white girl comedy movies, like what's her name? Melissa McCarthy. Her movies are notorious for this. that when she's Mrs. McCarthy and like that whole like that whole peer group, like that whole coterie of like SNL white
Yeah.
girls. Yeah, like when they are about to do something naughty or like uh mean or subversive or borderline criminal, they would start playing trap music or start playing like gangster rap music as if you know what I mean, like as if like cutting out early on work was the most gangster thing in the world. Like they would do that, and I kind of feel like black people who do that shit, like call Nancy Pelosi Suge Knight, they're just playing into that. Like
Sure.
yeah, like they're doing like mockery and minstrelsy of our culture. Like yeah,
Yes, they
yeah,
are.
it's the white chicks doing gang signs thing. You know what I mean? Like, but now you're the
Yeah.
black person that is like forcing Nancy Pelosi into doing a gang sign when that's not what she meant to do at all. All she
And I
did
think
was
that's what the
she just
insidious thing
clapped
is
weird. Yeah.
it's bad enough when they're corny, but it's insidious because what they do is they render subversive language and culture impotent and ultimately
Right.
regressive, and that's sort of where we are. And it made me think about something you brought to my attention without knowing, because how would you know who's reading your tweets? But it was that really regressive rant about black males that people were retweeting that was like would have made David Duke.
Which
like,
one? That
beam with
narrows
the-
down nothing.
It was the
Yeah,
one
that
where,
doesn't really narrow it down, bro.
it was the one where they can't even die right.
Oh yeah.
And they were like,
yeah.
she read what's her name? Aisha was like, he
Yisha
read Judah
Callahan.
Filth.
Yisha Callahan. Yeah. Oh, that was a read. And then like people got on her ass for that, and she deleted it. And you would have thought, okay, so maybe she felt like, okay, wow, I really shouldn't have done that. I should have thought harder about it. No, she just deleted the tweet so that her notifications wouldn't be like just shot to
Sure.
hell. And then she comes back and
Oh.
she's like, yeah, these homophobes and I don't know if she said Negro or incels, or I don't know if she said incels or not. I don't remember
I
offhand.
think she did.
Did she?
Mhm.
Man, yeah, but she was like, yeah, it's all these like homophobes
It was
and
something
incels or
slurish.
whatever. Yeah, and it's like, do you think that all the people that responded to you and had a problem with what? First of all, I would say like easily half of the responses were women, easily. Um, but do you think that all of the men that are responding to you right now is that they're incels, or are you just saying that to your white audience so that when you get checked by your own community, you can play it off and say, oh, but it's not like black people that you like or would want to care about or ally yourself with. It's the black incels and it's the scary black homophobes that we tell you are like the worst in the community. So the rant itself, like the TikTok rant itself, was like rehashed Moynihan report in sassy language, talking about being the least educated, most incarcerated, most
Sure.
homophobic, this, that, and the third. I was like, oh, okay, so what you're doing is saying to white people, it's actually like what this person said is safe because all the people that are responding to this are the ones that feel called out by what that guy is saying. Has nothing to do with the fact that he just smeared an entire subgroup of black people.
Well, yeah, I think you made it a point earlier. Someone did, that essentially said that an investment in intelligence and depth kind of loses you ground in the attention economy. So we train ourselves to read less, to pick out the easiest points, and it sort of leads to this formulaic discourse. I think you saw some of the results. You see some of the results of this like every fucking day, but in the past week, one of the notable ones was the website formerly known as Deadspin, or maybe still known as Deadspin with a different staff. Did you see that piece that they wrote about the white coach?
No.
Oh yeah,
No.
Who was actually half black?
He was actually biracial. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like they have the formula down, and they have the talking points, but they haven't actually done any of the research, and it leads to them using the formula incorrectly against the people they're supposed to be supporting. But that doesn't matter.
But I think what happens with that too is if you're paid for clicks and eyeballs, the longer that you spend researching anything, you can write a whole different article and get more clicks. Like, what's the point of writing twice as long on one article that's going to get the same amount of clicks as opposed to just getting it out there and then hurrying up and generating a second clickbait article, and now you have double the articles, double the click, and double the pay. And I think it's almost baked into the whole mechanism now to incentivize spending less time on things and constantly just getting more stuff out there to maximize the amount of eyeballs you generated in a given day.
Sure.
I,
And
I agree for sure, but I do think there is a sort of like other side of the coin thing with it, where some places, some sites definitely intentionally publish the wrong information. There's sort of an old internet adage that like if you ask a question, you might not get an answer, but if you give the wrong answer to a question on the internet, someone will always correct you. And I feel like it's part of the engagement with these articles. Like the more things you get wrong, the more people that can point it out online, and the more clicks that drive back to your like article. I do think it's 50-50 sometimes.
I can give you a related phenomenon to that. I think it's closely related. I noticed they like to troll, in particular, I feel, Black women. And it's not quite getting things wrong. It's giving white people credit for something that Black women did, so they can get the Black women to make it viral. And I've noticed that this is like I don't know if they discovered it by accident at first, but I feel like they totally troll on purpose now. What it is every month there'll be like Kendall Jenner um makes box braids popular. And it's kind of like, I'm like, okay, I could believe in 2014, maybe that's an innocent mistake. But at this point, you just know if you put that article out there, a bunch of Black people are gonna be like, "What? Who made box braids popular?" So it's like they do it all the time. Like, these two white girls invented a incredible TikTok dance, and I started thinking like what you're saying, similar to the getting it wrong thing, where they're not trying to troll minorities to get them outraged. It's like outrage farming. I think that's another thing that happens, but it's a innocent sounding outrage farming. It isn't the old edgelord, snarky type of we're going to generate controversy by being mean. It's going to be like tee hee hee, look what we did, you know. Oops, did we do that? You know, and but yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that's totally a thing.
Do you think it's something similar that happens when and you've talked about this a bunch on like Champagne Sharks, where like the New York Times will run a piece where it's basically just like a writer complaining about their spouse that totally just could have been, you know, like a story among friends. There's no reason for it to be in the New York Times, and it kind of feels like the editors are intentionally making the person into like an object of mockery. Like maybe the writer didn't even know that that's what was going on, but some editor was like, "Oh man, we're gonna run this, and they're gonna get made fun of for like a week, and we're gonna get so many views out of this."
I was talking about on the show, and by the way, I moved to the next caller to keep it flowing. But Jason,
I was gonna say
Jason, feel free. Hold on, are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought I heard you talking at the same time.
No, I did want to make. Yeah, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I wanted to make one quick point, which was, and I hate to bring this up because I like Sarah Haji, I do, and I think she's really cool. I think her brother's really cool also, but I think occasionally, I don't know if it's that like people come up with ideas and their editors don't care enough about them to say, yeah, that's funny between us, but you probably shouldn't do that. Or if their editors encourage them to do this kind of shit, like egg them on. So after Joan Didion died, Sarah Haji wrote an article or wrote like a brief blog post in Gawker, basically saying that like you know white women inconsolable, and basically made like it was just like a really mean kind of like, oh, white women are so sad that Joan Didion died. Like, well, I dropped out of college,
but it wasn't even clever.
I've never read anything about her, and it's like, what is wrong with you? Like that, somebody who a lot of people like, who's writing a lot of people admire, not just white women. A lot of people, including myself, admire Joan Didion's work, and she passes away, and you make it about white women tears. And it's like, yeah, there are going to be white women's tears because somebody that they admire, who I think wrote very good work that a lot of people can relate to, and by the way, was at the time was one of the people brave enough to speak up about the Central Park Five, not after the fact, not after it turns out that they were innocent, but during the time said, okay, the way that they were conducting this is very reminiscent of a lynch mob, and defended the Central Park Five at a time when that was not a popular thing to do. And you want to turn around and
even among Black people, it wasn't popular to do.
No, it wasn't. Like people were trying to throw them under the bus and be like, "Well, we're not like them." Like the whole dialogue, the whole discourse about Wilden came from the Central Park Five. So, and a lot of people, or a lot of black people at the time, were distancing themselves from the Central Park Five because these were like the the hoodlums and thugs that we were not
Look at
trying
Bell
to.
Hooks.
Yeah, exactly. So, uh, anyway, to take it back to the point, um, people will just like write stuff like that, and like that's supposed to pass for humor or pass for like deep insight, and it's like, no, not only are you doing something that is like culturally not valuable, like it carries no value whatsoever, but you're also unnecessarily pissing off a whole lot of people uh who did nothing to deserve it, and shitting on somebody who did nothing to deserve being shat on. Like you're supposed to, or not supposed to, but like if you're gonna do the Christopher Hitchens missionary positioning thing where you take down a popular figure, there should at least be something about that person or personality that is worth shitting on. Like for Mother Teresa, when Christopher Hitchens took on her saintly character, he showed that, yeah, but she was a purveyor of misery and an absolute hypocrite. She caused a whole lot of people to suffer unnecessarily. But like, what's the worst thing you could say about her? I don't know, that like maybe early in
But
her
but
life she was a
but
conservative.
the problem with what that woman did is she didn't even know why she disliked Joan Didion,
No,
except for that it made white women mad.
yeah,
Like, and that was it. But the other thing that got me upset too with that was that, okay, if your whole thing is gonna be about shitting on white people all the time, like I know some black people who genuinely don't have any white friends. Like Vida, our co-host of a show, who's watching, always mentions that she doesn't have white friends in real life, and I never hear her talk bad obsessively about like white people, what white women are doing, and everything. But I always notice these authors and freelance writers for these publications who have the most to say about, like, white people this, white people that, have like all white friends. Like
all
even like,
right.
yes, even when the responses were coming to her her article, right? First off, she made it so that you couldn't reply to it, which I think was kind of like a chicken thing to do. Like if you're gonna, you can't throw stones and hide your hands. So she tweeted it, and then she made it so that you can't reply to the tweet. So the only things that were coming in the responses were fawning from her friends, which is more of that fragility thing, right? And they were all like these white women. They were like, "Oh my God, you really read her for filth," and it's like, okay, you're white. Like, what are you doing? Like, is this like your white guilt to just show I'm not one of those white people that gets mad? Oh, white women, they suck, and you're white yourself, and it's just like this weird theater where first off, you have to act like you hate white women so much, but all your like fans and boosters are like white women who just enjoy having you shit on them and like more and more, please. I'm so white. I'm so bad,
Yeah, it's,
and
punish me, mommy.
it
Like
drives me
it's yeah,
nuts.
yeah. It's giving sadomasochism is what it is. You know,
Yes, yeah,
it's the
yeah. So,
white
so,
guilt for me.
and one of the things that I was gonna say in response to what Kurt said, one of the things I've been talking about with somebody the other day was I feel like there should be a new rule in this era of outrage farming and in the kind of stuff that Lewis was talking about, which I totally agree. I think they get things wrong on purpose, and I think they play dumb on purpose. Is editors should be listed with the writer, I think, as a new practice. Like, for example, written by so and so, edited by so and so. And I bet you so much of this would get sorted out
Yeah.
because I think a lot of these editors, if they had to put their names on this stuff, like they know these writers are hungry. They know a lot of these writers um are attention starved. And a lot of them come from Twitter and social media where all they care about is going viral. And they bring that attitude to the actual writing. Like another writer of that article, Sarah, was somebody who was like a Twitter star, and she um gets a lot of her writing stuff from being on Twitter, and she brings that same type of I want to get quick engagement and quick outrage to get clicks type of attitude to her writing. But a lot of these editors, I think, are happy to just throw these people under the bus and let them ruin their names and their careers while they get to kind of hide. But I really think they should start making editors put their names, because I was like, first off, this editor is not doing her any service as a writer, because first off, the thing was like 3 paragraphs long, At no point there was no wit to it, and it was like a good editor should be able to protect you from yourself and your worst impulses, not just let you lean into them and throw it out there and wash your hands of the thing. But if if this ever passes, this whole way of writing, ever passes, and like real writing comes into vogue, or they just move on to different bullshit writers, like maybe right now they're into like women of color or queer people of color or whatever as a bullshit writing of the day. Maybe in the future they'll be into a different type of bullshit writer, and your specification, your specific expertise, so to speak, is not in vogue anymore. You're going to have no good clippings. You're going to have no sign that you know how to write. You're going to have no
Mhm.
actual honed skills. Like these people are doing these writers disservice by just letting them pass off snarky tweet threads as writing. Yeah, they're not helping them build any craft or do anything. And I think they should really start putting um, editors' names on the bylines. I think there should be something about recruiting from the internet where, like, even if you recruit someone from the internet, like, give them a crash course in how to write anyway. Don't just let them um, tweet thread their way into an article and just publish that. And the last thing I'm gonna say is, I think Harry Potter is a good example of like where all this comes from. What I mean by that is, I remember when Harry Potter first came out and was really big in like whenever it first came out. I don't know if it was the 90s or the 2000s, but whenever it first came out, everybody was trying to kind of defend it by saying it's making kids read. It's making kids read. More kids are reading now than ever. But then people were like, no, these kids need to be reading like the classics and everything. And it's like, oh, that's the old way. You're a conservative. You're a reactionary. Uh, it's okay for kids and even adults to read Harry Potter because they were saying it was gonna be a gateway drug in a way. Like it's gonna make all these people like great readers and get them to the adult stuff. And instead, we just have a lot of 30 and 40-year-olds who just read young adult stuff. And even if they read grown stuff, they want to read like young adult stuff. And unfortunately, she wasn't able to get the tech stuff worked out. But the Squeakcore thing was a perfect example of how everything is written like YA novels. But
Oh yeah.
even the MFA stuff, and Jason knows more about the MFA culture than I do. But I've tried a lot of modern MFA stuff, and it's like, okay, this is YA literature, but about a 20 something navigating her first job out of college. But this just feels like Harry Potter for grown people. Like this is not grown up writing. And I feel like the same thing is happening with the Buzzfeed, Tumblrish type of writing, where they're like, hey, people need to read. It's better than not reading. If we have to get 20 listicles, if we have to get 20 GIF listicles to get people to read about the Supreme Court abortion decision, then so be it. At least like they're reading, but it's just leading to people who just can't think and process beyond GIFs. And
Well, real quick,
that's basically all I have to say.
the one of the earlier callers mentioned Gamergate in particular, and was talking about kind of like the game review, game writing, the video game journalism scene around that time, which I guess would have been like 2012, 2013, maybe a little bit later. If you go back and look up the writers who were actually like good writers who were writing about video games at that time, pretty much none of them are actually still writing. They've all moved on to do other things sometimes in completely different industries, where like the fact that this sort of content is pushed to the fore doesn't just prioritize bad writers. It actually pushes good writers out, because they go, well, like, why am I doing this? Like, this is pointless. I don't want to write this crap, and it doesn't pay good anyway. So like, to what you were saying about, like, you're gonna wind up with like a bunch of crappy clips that aren't any good. Like, why would you do that to yourself if you actually care about writing? You're just gonna go onto like Medium and just write it for yourself and get a regular job where you can actually get paid, a decent amount of money, instead of putting yourself through, nonstop abuse to make content that you're not even proud of. So it has really long-term like ripple-on effects too.
With video game journalism, I think this is a bit of an odd example in terms of like other types of like media spheres people write about, like film and like television and stuff like that. I think with video game journalism, like you said, a lot of the people that write about this kind of stuff end up leaving like online media and like print media, and they go to other avenues within video games. I think that is actually a very rare situation that is specific to video game journalism, because you very rarely hear about someone who reviews television shows or reviews movies for a living suddenly getting into the industry. Whereas with video game journalism, a lot of these people do genuinely find work in like PR firms, or even in rare situations, I've heard of a lot of older sort of like 2010s, early 2000s video game journalists actually writing video games now. So
Wait, but
it
are
is
you
an odd
saying the
example.
good ones? Are you saying the
Yeah,
good ones end up?
yeah,
See,
genuinely.
see, now this is what I think happens. I think it does happen in other mediums, but in reverse. I think in TV, film, and comics and stuff, the bad ones end up segueing into the industry. So in the way that kind of heartens me that you said in video games, the good writers who can't take the BuzzFeed type, Tumblr type writing that they have to do are able to go into video games. But to me, I feel like when it comes to comics, when it comes to TV, when it comes to movies, you, writing in a Tumblr BuzzFeedy way is actually what gets you picked to be in the industry. So I think in addition to everything else, and this is why I think a lot of the reactionaries unfortunately do much better industry coverage in a lot of um, instances, is these people have no interest in getting access to the media. In fact, something that I find really interesting about them is, and this is what liberals and progressives used to do, they're really into bootstrapping and doing their own DIY indie comics. So like everybody hates that Richard Meyer diversity in comics guy, but that guy crowdfunded like 3 or 4 different comic books. He didn't just say, "Hey, I desperately want to work for Marvel and DC, and I'll take peanuts to do it." So I'm like, okay, love him or hate him, that guy creates. And there's like several other people, like 3 or 4 other people that I've seen just said, "Hey, we don't like what we see. We're going to do all this long form criticism about it all day long, and we're going to actually make um, comics and crowdfund them." And they get the comics crowdfunded. And that used to be the punk rock way of doing stuff. That used to be the hip hop way of doing stuff. And it's not anymore on the left of progressives. Now, left people and progressive people think that the corporations are their friends now in a weird way that I've never seen before. Like, for example, Spotify, um, Neil Young gave like some kind of threat to Spotify because he was upset about Joe Rogan and whatever. And Spotify was like, "Oh, goodbye, Neil Young. You're an old 70 something hippie, and Joe Rogan's our number 2 draw on the whole channel." And then people were like tweeting like these different like blue checks and stuff. They're like, "I'm so disappointed in you, Spotify," and and the people were talking like they're like,
But they're
this
still gonna listen to
corporation.
Spotify. They're still gonna keep their Spotify subscription, right?
Exactly.
And
First off, they're still going to keep their spot.
I was gonna say, I
Go ahead.
think it actually speaks to something that's a little bit more insidious, which is, I think for most people, the um the levers that they're supposed to be able to pull to affect a political result are pretty much broken. Like, there's nothing that you can actually do to make a politician do what you ask them to do if you're anywhere to the left of like an 80s Reaganite. So if you vote, the person that you vote for doesn't really give a fuck about you. You're just voting for a better alternative to like super like far right wing reactionaries. And what they've done instead is turn corporations into something approximating their idea of government. Like, you making your voice heard on social media is supposed to affect the same kind of result as going to a politician's town hall and yelling at them. But whereas politicians are ostensibly supposed to be beholden to their constituency, their voter base. Um, so they're like, if they're not listening to their voter base, they're not doing their job right. But a corporation's responsibility isn't to the end user. The corporation's responsibility, because the end user is just the like financial supply, like they're providing the stream of income, but their actual responsibility is to their shareholders. So for people to get upset at Spotify and say, it's terrible that you have Joe Rogan on, and even Neil Young thinks it's so much of a problem that he's going to leave the platform. All Spotify has to do is just take one look at their the fastest growing areas of their listener base and cross reference that with people who are listening to Neil Young music and make a decision from there. Well, if Neil Young leaves, is it a good business decision to keep Joe Rogan on, or is it a good business decision to let go of Joe Rogan and keep Neil Young? And very obviously, they're looking at Joe Rogan's audience and they're like, these people are making us all kinds of money. Why the fuck would we
Yeah.
get rid of our most profitable product? So they tell people to go pound sound, and then all you can do is just get mad about it on the internet. And it's the corporation's job is to do exactly what they just did. Why did you think it was going to turn out any other way?
But the thing that's weird about it is the actual disappointment. And it's kind of like these corporations do these kind of bullshit things where they have some diverse writers of different types, and they have like these pandering articles about RuPaul's Drag Race, or about some new black movie, or about Issa Rae, how great she is, and they let a black person write the article about the black person, the gay person write an article about the gay people. And with that pandering, somehow like a lot of like modern liberals or whatever get a weird sense of ownership over the corporation, or a weird feeling that the corporation is their ally. And to the extent that the legal fiction of a corporation being a person is true, I mean, I don't think it is true, but to the extent it is true, that person would be a sociopath. It would not be an ally that goes to marches with you and everything. And this woman tweeted today. She was a blue check who tweeted, like, her profile is educator and host who writes about history, politics, education, civil rights, pop culture, and feminism. And she tweeted out this tweet, the fact that Spotify, and she tagged Spotify, so I guess to just shame them because they care, chose the fact that Spotify chose Joe Rogan over Neil Young is absolutely disgusting. And then somebody retweeted that and goes, "What do they think corporations are?" And I just thought that was the perfect
Yeah.
response. Like what does she think this thing is supposed to do? And we live in a weird world now where the actual reactionary people have more healthy skepticism and distrust of the huge corporations than your average liberal who likes squeakcore and is into Harry Potter and everything. Like all those people getting mad at the Harry Potter people for, letting J.K. Rowling appear in the reunion special, but they're still gonna watch the special. They just want to make sure she's not in it. They're still gonna make her money. They're still gonna watch the damn special. You know what I mean? They don't have enough principles to just not watch the thing. They just want some token gesture that she's not going to be visible to them while they're watching it and helping her get rich. And if they do that, they'll believe the corporation is their friend. And if someone responded to me, they were like, "Oh, you're giving conservatives too much credit because conservatives, they like that Black Rifle coffee thing, and they eat up all these stupid companies that pander to them." And I was like, first off, conservatives are supposed to kiss business ass. So it's like if they do it, it's in line with their principles. And it's like the fact that your first thing is, well, they do it too. And it's like your first thing is just to kind of be like make an equivalency, but you got to think about the context. Like they're doing what they're supposed to do. So I don't get mad about that. They're being true to themselves. You should hold yourself to a higher standard as a liberal or a progressive or a radical than them. Like you shouldn't just look for your first out for yourself. But then second thing is when they do it, chances are they're actually right that the company believes it. Like when they're celebrating, like for example, if they were to um respond to Nestle's, if Nestle pandered to them and they responded, and then they found out that they were doing child slave labor overseas, they'd be like, hell yeah, I like that. Like the fucked up things that corporations do, they're actually okay with. So they're not being hypocrites. But the second thing is those companies that they like that Black Rifle Coffee. Have you guys ever seen the Black Rifle Coffee thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have no doubt those people are true believers. They're true believers. It's not like a fake bullshit pandering. Like, the chances are that the things that pander to them that they like, first off, will actually be small and upstart. It's not gonna be like a Fortune 500 thing, right? And the second thing is, most of the time, I think they really do espouse their values, and I think that not caring about access, like they're not caring if they get a job at Time Warner. They don't expect to. They don't care about pitching a show to HBO Max. They're gonna crowdfund it. I think there's a weird uh thing happening where things are getting weirdly inverted.
This reminds me when you're talking about the Black Rifle Coffee thing. Speaking earlier about the Comicsgate thing, it reminded me that a lot of actors, when they step out of line in like a TV show and like they run into some social media trouble. Someone like Gina Carano is a good example. The minute the sort of like cat is out of the bag type of thing, and like they're finally struck from whatever show or film they were in, and like their Twitter account is deleted or whatever, they always have this like safety net of like Republican, like conservative, like television pundit thing to fall back on. Where like all of a sudden it was like, was this the plan the whole time? Like, were you always sort of planning to just like become as famous as humanly possible, say what you want to say, and then fall back on this career of like someone who appears on Fox News once every 2 months and is in like a direct to VHS like film like once every 2 years? I often wonder if like a lot of these people, they know that like when things go wrong, they can easily fall back on a career fueled by hate instead of a career fueled by Hollywood,
It's funny that you mentioned
I think
Gina Carano, because it's kind of a perfect example, right? Where so she's like kind of a reactionary, like her reactionary viewpoints are kind of just like stupid reactionary viewpoints for the most part. Like she kind of just has like Facebook mom viewpoints. I feel like she doesn't even seem like someone who's like a well considered like far right person. She just kind of seems to have the kind of typical reactionary weird viewpoints that you get in any like neighborhood Facebook group. Clearly Disney knew about her viewpoints and political stance for a long time. They didn't fire her over that. They fired her because she couldn't keep her mouth shut. So it's funny, of course, that like the kind of more liberal Disney fans look at that and still want to applaud the company for firing her. It's like, well, no, like if the company actually cared, they would have fired her months or years ago. They only fired her because she was causing a problem for their bottom line. One, and the other thing is to go back to something that T said about people looking at. Actually, it may have been Q. I apologize. I lost track of who was talking. Was talking about kind of like how like the levers of power are broken. At least corporations are in some ways beholden to somebody. Where if you breach your fiduciary duty, it is written down that if you go against the interests of the shareholders, you are probably violating state and possibly even federal law, and you can be held responsible. Whereas a politician can just kind of do whatever they want, like once they're in office. So it's both kind of understandable in that the actions of corporations are at least rational within the viewpoint of a corporation, but also kind of doubly pathetic. Whereas like it's literally written down where a corporation, at least a public one, just doesn't cannot care what you think if you're not a shareholder. Literally, they're legally held to only care about what shareholders think.
Yeah, totally. And I would like to go to Andy because he's been very patient in the queue. But also, uh, please, other people, if you have thoughts, feel free to hop up. We'll be more attentive to the queue in the future. But yeah, by all means, Andy, let her rip.
Hey, yeah, I just wanted to hop in again. Because, well, first of all, way back, you guys just mentioned offhandedly about people, kind of indignantly saying they didn't read things. And I was actually thinking about, and you mentioned the Chappelle thing, and I was thinking about, when you were on Bad Faith and the other person on the
Yeah,
panel did that. And at the time, it was really, it kind of like, a light kind of went off my head with something about like kind of like lib thinking, because it's like, Dave Chappelle, for whatever you think about him, he's really popular, like similar to Joe Rogan or whatever, like he's really popular. So if he is making what you believe to be anti-trans, like if you really care about the plight of trans people, and then there's a really popular person who is remaining popular, like the stuff that he's saying isn't turning people completely off of him. Do you know what I mean? Wouldn't you want to watch it and see like what he's doing and to adequately combat it? Do you know what I mean? Like it seems like such a
oh
weird
yeah,
thing. And I feel similarly about, I actually really like Neil Young's music a lot and stuff. And like similarly with Joe Rogan, it's like if Joe Rogan is saying, I mean, I guess he's like upset about like anti-vax shit, which like I don't know, like whatever. But it's like if you really feel like he's doing this thing is so bad, like wouldn't you want to like actually engage with it and say, and I a lot of my mutuals on social media and stuff, even kind of more left people that I'm friends with, we're all like, yeah, like way to go, Neil Young, like get Joe Rogan. And like, dude, Joe Rogan is so dumb. Like he's the dumbest guy. So it's like if this is the like avatar for like this thing that you think is so destructive, and it's this guy that's just like unbelievably dumb and not able to really persuade, like it's not it just seems really strange to me that it's like you're so excited, you're so angry about this thing that like, but then, and I wasn't really trying to interrogate people, but I was kind of curious to say, well, like, what are these specific things that Joe Rogan is saying that you find like so reprehensible or so dangerous? And how is he saying them in this way that you still have, I read somewhere, I think maybe it was Glenn Greenwald or somebody, but it's like 10 million people or something listen to that podcast. And the guy's just like a total dummy and will say the completely opposite thing depending on who, like, Cornel West will be on there, and then Joe Rogan will kind of sound like a lefty, and then like Jordan Peterson will be on there, and then he'll kind of sound like he's just a dummy. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy.
Well, Joe Rogan, I think a big thing with him, I don't know how much of it is, it's not quite dumbness so much as credulousness, as in everything.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, it's related to dumbness, but it's a very specific type where what I like about it was every single thing blows his mind. Like, whoa, really? And it's just like whatever the last thing
Okay,
to
but
get
if
into
you're
his head
high
is,
all the fucking time,
blows his
then
mind.
anything remotely smart or smart sounding that somebody says is going to sound like the most mind blowing thing that you've ever heard, right? Like,
I will say like one thing about Joe Rogan, like I've thought about this a tiny little bit, and the one thing I think about Joe Rogan is he has no ideological grounding at all. So he doesn't, like, if somebody starts telling him something about like economics or about the poor or something, he can't say, oh wait, but like this is how I think about economics, and that doesn't
no, he
comport
has
with
no
that. You know what I mean?
ability
Like
to synthesize information. Everything in his is. I don't know how you have a head that big with nothing going on inside it. Everything
like
inside of his head
he's
is
like
just
a normal guy.
it's
Like
a
I think a lot of
catalog
people
of
are like
Google searches is all it is. It's like,
He
oh, is that true? Pull that up on the screen, Jamie. I want to see that. And it's like, and whatever Jamie pulled up last episode doesn't exist unless it has to do with vaccines or chimpanzee videos. And that's pretty much it.
he
So,
lacks he lacks object
if it's a
evidence, but for
chimpanzee,
like opinions.
if it's a group of chimpanzees just straight fucking up some other wild animal, he'll remember that, right? But if it's like anything to do remotely with like politics or economics or socioeconomics or what, like, it doesn't exist for him. But the thing is, The episode, and I watched the whole thing. The episode with Jordan Peterson, I think, kind of highlights both of their shortcomings, which is that Jordan Peterson is also a fucking idiot. Just
Yeah, totally.
so stupid.
He compared like trans with the satanic panic. Did you see that part? And he said it went back. He said it went back hundreds of years. Like he said that like mass hysteria goes back like 500 years of the study, and it's like you didn't even have psychology 500 years ago. What are you talking about? But Joe Rogan can't say that.
Well, okay. Sorry, here's the thing about no, it's all good. You're making some really good points. If you're gonna interrupt me, like make good points like that one.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I appreciate it. When you are trained in Jungian psychology, the least you could ask for if you're going to become that big of a name is to be like an expert in Jungian psychology. And the problem is, not one single person I know who teaches psychology, and I mean, I don't know a lot of people that are consider themselves Jungians, but they've read enough Jung to be able to have a fairly good handle on his oeuvre and his frameworks. And not a single one of them has said, "Oh yeah, this is somebody who's like a leader in the field." All of them are like, "This guy's a fucking idiot." And on anything that's outside of his area of professional expertise, which is supposed to be Jungian psychology, he doesn't make any fucking sense. Slavoj Žižek rolled up, and I remember this because I was there. I was at the Žižek versus Peterson debate. Slavoj Žižek showed up to that. He was drunk off his ass. Like my man was halfway into a bottle of Stoli before coming out on that stage, which he had probably on the stage. I mean, the dude slurred his way through an introductory section and gave Peterson like a couple of like light little love taps. Peterson's opening argument not only did it make no sense, he admitted during his opening argument that he hadn't read the Communist Manifesto in like 20 years or something. But that was what he was basing his opening argument on, was his day before reading of the Communist Manifesto, as if all Marxism is reducible to a 20-page pamphlet. It's like, bro, you're a university professor. You're supposed to be good at reading things. You knew this debate was coming up for months, and it didn't occur to you to read any Marxist theory. You read this 20-page, and he didn't seem to really understand what was being said in the pamphlet. So he was talking about dictatorship of the proletariat. He was talking about means of production, this, that, and the third. And it's like half of that stuff was barely even mentioned in the manifesto. So I know that you're just like, it's all hearsay. And then he was talking about postmodernism. I was like, but Marxism and postmodernism are completely incompatible concepts. There is no fucking Marxist out there that believes in postmodernism. So it's like people caught that during the debate, and I would have thought that Žižek would have absolutely just annihilated him. Žižek didn't do that. He was actually very nice with him, but he did one thing which should have ended Peterson's career as a grifter, which was, okay, so you keep talking about all these like Marxist professors, this growing threat of Marxism in the academy. Who were you talking about? Can you name any? Peterson couldn't name one. Žižek had to name people for him. This is how bad that was. So he will then go on Joe Rogan's show. Rogan doesn't know anything about anything. He's, again, huge head with no thoughts rattling around inside of it. And Peterson will say dumb shit like that, like climate science doesn't work because they're working with finite models and therefore it's synonymous with everything. And Rogan, who doesn't know what scientific modeling is supposed to look like or what data modeling is supposed to look like, doesn't know that you have to work with a finite number of frameworks or variables. So he's not smart enough to say, but that's how that sort of testing works. Peterson then just gets away. So it's like I'm trying to think of a less vulgar way to say this, but I don't think I can. Imagine the dumbest person you know jizzing into Peterson's mouth, and then him and Rogan snowball the jizz back and forth with each other. That's all that conversation was.
So Peterson is kind of remarkable to me because he folklore studies is like a personal obsession of mine. It was something I got into when I was in an anthropology program in college. And it's remarkable that Peterson talks extensively about folklore history and uses folklore extensively when he's talking about, like maps of meaning and like kind of the way that we perceive stories. He knows absolutely nothing about the discipline of folklore studies. Like I have never once heard him allude to a knowledge of like the historical development of different folk tales. Like he literally has no intellectual curiosity about it, and it's something that I see a lot with kind of people on that kind of like right wing public intellectual side, along the lines of like Steven Pinker or like Malcolm Gladwell. Like they have no knowledge of the social science disciplines that they brush up against. They feel like they could just kind of like shoulder their way through from first principles, and like they've just never done the reading. It's really remarkable.
And they also lie. And they also lie.
Oh,
Steven
yeah.
Pinker just straight up lies.
The other thing, real quick, I think the caller's name was Andy. I apologize. You mentioned originally kind of like people being proud of not having done the reading. So something I've noticed is that to liberals, media consumption is praxis, right? Like if you consume good media, if you consume good, quote unquote, the right books, that is political progress. If you consume the wrong ones, that's political like decay. That's like degeneracy. So they're proud of not reading or not watching the bad thing because they're only consuming pure media. And again, this is why I want to echo T that I wish that Raquel were here, because this is something that she talks a lot about is like that becomes a substitute for actual political action, is consuming stuff that is, politically I hate to say politically correct, but it's literally politically correct.
Yeah, and people should check out Raquel's podcast, Right Good, and the episode on Squeakcore, because what she talks about on Squeakcore is exactly what we talk about a lot on the show. And I so wish her audio was able to work out, because she has a lot of good thoughts about this. But to add to what Andy said, and by the way, Andy, I just move you to the audience just to keep it moving. But with anybody that we move to the audience, is just to give the other person a chance to speak. But everyone's always welcome to come back up into the queue. It's not a sign that you should, not come back or anything personal. It's just something that we do. But Andy said something that was pretty good, right? With that whole thing about when I was on bad faith and the professor, Stephen Thrasher, admitted not reading the book. And I had watched the Dave Chappelle special, right? But then I'm like really anal about this stuff. I went and hunted down the transcript and I printed out the transcript. So I made like all these highlights in the transcript, and I'm like, I want to really know this stuff inside out, because I'm going up against like a professor, and he's gonna like really know his stuff. And the first thing he announced was, yeah, so I didn't watch the special. But he said it like proudly, like I didn't watch it. And one thing that was interesting, right? I think with a lot of people in this kind of Buzzfeedified, Tumblrified media, is Tumblr is a place where everything is violence. If you do something on Tumblr and it hurts somebody's feelings of the community, then you are now like an evil person, and everything has to be affirmation and validation. And BuzzFeed, I think, comes to the same conclusion from a different direction for corporate reasons. As in, we want to maximize hits, we want to maximize clicks, we want to get everybody in the same page. So we're going to be as saccharine and non offensive as possible. But when both ethoses merge together, I feel like all the media now is aimed at affirming and validating, and it sounds like redundant words, but like the way that I read it and understood it when I researched it is like affirmation is like, I'm supporting you for what you believe or what you think or how you act, or certain thing. And validation is, I support you for like what you are, like no matter what you do. So for example, if you're like black, white, trans, cis, straight, gay, you're automatically good just because of what you are, even before you do anything. And everything now, I feel like in modern academia, in modern writing, is geared toward that. So then the biggest crime you can ever do is invalidate or disaffirm somebody. So if you look at the things that these people even always complain about all the time when you're talking to them, if you disagree with them, they say that's violence. And to them, that really is violence because you're not affirming them. Or something like gaslighting. Like they always say, you're gaslighting me, you know? And gaslighting is the ultimate form of invalidation. So if your whole existence is, I have to be constantly affirmed and validated minute to minute, then if you're not affirming them, if you're not validating them, like they're feeling psychically annihilated, you know? And I think that's kind of like where it comes from. Everything is this life and death risk of psychic annihilation if they're not constantly affirmed and validated, like minute to minute. To me, that's how it reads to me. And I think when it becomes that way, the person that you're up against who is invalidating you or disaffirming you just by saying something you don't like, they're actually psychically annihilating you, and that makes them evil. Like anybody who wants to annihilate somebody else is an evil person, whether it's figuratively or literally. So I think what kind of happens to these people and their arguing skills, first off, when you're on social media and you deal with these people, they're always instantly blocking you, muting you, getting upset. They'll do this thing where they'll actually get block lists. Like what they'll do is one of their friends will have like 100 people blocked, and they'll be like, "Hey, can you give me your block list so I can just block the 100 people that you have blocked, just in case one of them might accidentally disaffirm me or invalidate me." Like that's how like fragile they are. So they create these filter bubbles and echo chambers where they never have to deal with a contrary thought or anybody that will press them and make them have to defend their stance. So I think they get like, they get to start feeling smarter than they are, right? Because they've actually preemptively blocked anybody that can have a good argument against them. They'll even block the bad arguments, you know. And then what kind of happens is in that circle, when everyone thinks the same and is just as fragile, in his circles, he probably gets applauded, you know, when he says, "Hey, I didn't watch this thing." Kind of like what Kurt was saying. Like the value is what you consume and don't consume is, you know, a good testament to how good a person you are. So he's probably used to going to spaces where he announces, "By the way, guys, I didn't watch that bad thing," and everyone's like, "Yeah, you know, go you." So when he did it in the bad faith space, that's all anybody talks about in the comments. That's all anybody cared about. I had like all these good points I thought I had ready, and nobody cared about them. That's all anybody. But it makes sense that people would care about that. But if you lose your grounding in the real world, you start ending up in this bizarre world where it actually takes you off guard that people actually want you to watch what you claim to be an expert on. Because the articles that these people are commissioned to write, the editors don't care if they read it. I actually saw articles that were actually commissioned and printed where in the first paragraph of the article, the person admits they didn't read the damn thing. And so it's like your editors aren't asking you to do it. In academia, nobody's asking you to do it. They're all cheering you if you say you don't do it. And then you actually end up in this bizarre world with its own values. And the minute you step out of it, you look crazy, you know? And I really think they think anybody who makes them feel bad at any given point is really like a Hitler. And it kind of makes sense then why they write and talk the way they do. Because if you were gonna do a hit piece on Hitler, is anybody really going to say, "Well, did you read Mein Kampf?" You know, it's Hitler. Everybody knows the most evil shit on the planet, and they really think that other people see their opponents as evil as they do, such that it's like a Hitler hit piece. Like, oh, no one's going to actually ask me to make a good point and research about Dave Chappelle because they're going to see as clearly as I do that he's a modern anti-trans Hitler. And yeah, I mean, that's all I have to say.
I think what you're referring to, like when people like share like block lists and stuff on like Twitter, that's a classic thing. A lot of me and my friends talk about. We have this saying. We always refer to Twitter as an echo chamber, and people like they they specialize their like follower list, and like they block who they want, and like they make sure that everything they say, they're saying it to someone who already agrees with the point before they've made it. Whilst I think like a lot of people on Twitter that sort of have this rep that like live in echo chambers and like only talk about the things that they agree with, I think that's stereotypically something that like the more like liberal side is accused for. But my God, I think like the more conservative, like right wing side is so much worse for it. The fact that like they make their own apps, like what was that one? What was
for
the
sure.
Trump one? Parler, was that it? And like they just
There was
recede
Parler,
into
there was
it.
Gab, there was Gab
Yeah.
too.
Yeah,
But you know what? But you know
that
one
upsets
thing that's
me.
different though. But you know one thing that's different though, and this was brought up in the beginning. They need the echo chambers, but like was brought up earlier, when they hate something, they will read it to like the last word just to rant against it. But they'll rant against it within their echo chamber. But it's like
Wait, who's they? And like the blue check driver type people, the social justice
oh no,
influencers.
no, I'm talking about earlier when Kurt was talking about how
Oh, okay.
those people from that Hacker News libertarian
Yeah.
site, they will actually read the articles. They'll be wrong about it, about what it means. But yeah, I notice all the time, like a lot of these reactionary people, they do have this thing where they actually hunt down contrary opinions just to argue against them badly. So I agree. I agree with I agree what you're saying, Lewis, that they are worse in their own ways, but I do think they at least will read the things where I know a lot of times with some of these liberals, they will just see a title sometimes of something I write, and then they'll cancel me without even like clicking the thing that I tweeted. You know, so it's very weird thing. So I think you're right, but I also think there's something different as well.
So
I think the difference is like sorry, go on. Yeah.
I was going to say, liberals think though that Twitter will become that space for them, or that Facebook will become that space for them. Like they actually believe that a company like Twitter, will become this like progressive space that will block all the people that they disagree with. If anything, conservatives are realistic about the fact that that's never going to happen, and so they actually do set out to create their own space. Like the reason that progressives don't do that is because they genuinely believe that they can convince these companies to become progressive actors for them, which if anything is kind of more naive.
So you're saying in a way they think Twitter is already their Gab?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's like how, what was it? I think it was I think it was Kamala Harris who like brought up in one of the debates that like she would call on Twitter to ban Donald Trump.
Yeah, which they ended up doing anyway. So like we made a lot of fun of her doing. Yeah. But I think that it kind of, because T and I have talked about this, highlighting the importance of having, I hate using the word spaces, but I don't really know what other word there is to use. I don't know, because these people have fucking ruined like entire words in the English language. But like there would be spaces like the Phil Donahue show where you would have like reactionary far right politicians and like the Nation of Islam go at it, or like Sister Soldier and Cornel West would hash out their differences. And you don't really have places for that now. Like you don't have places where people can like go into, like, smart people who know their shit have read or watched uh whether it's like political info or cultural info or whatever, but like they've read or watched or listened to things, synthesized ideas about them, compared them to what came earlier, had some ideas about how things will proceed if they go down current trajectories, and have smart things to say about it. Like you don't really have those places where people who believe one idea can have a conversation with people who believe another idea and let the audience decide. I'm not really talking about debates. I'm just talking about like having informed conversations about things. That doesn't really exist anymore. And now the problem is that I think there's like like I think there are actually only, for example, 3 movie reviewers left in the world. Everybody else is auditioning for a gig at Warner Brothers or wherever. Like they're trying to find an agent and they're trying to find a corporate gig. Like that's what the movie review industry has become, is an audition to work in the movie industry. And I think there's only 3 actual reviewers left in the world. That would be John Semley, um, oh my god, how the hell am I gonna forget? Oh, Barry
Armand
Hertz.
White.
I was just gonna say, so John Semley, Barry Hertz, and Armand White, and that's it. Like
Yeah.
I can't think of anybody else that actually does the hard work of reviewing movies. John actually
Mark
wrote a really
Commode.
good. What?
Mark Commode. You guys like get Mark Commode in the States?
No,
Oh
No,
my
but
god.
I'm gonna check him out.
I'm
Yeah,
actually
I will check
offended
this
by
out,
that
yeah.
revelation.
Oh no, I'll go check this person out. I'm actually no, I'm looking for people that like have not okay. People think that criticism is critique, and when I say critique, I don't just mean people who are willing to tear apart movies. I'm talking about people that will actually analyze movies. Will talk about, hey, here are some of the good things that this movie did. Here are some of the terrible things this movie did. Here's how this movie compares to others in its genre or have utilized the tropes that it's used before. How effective is it when measured against them? You don't really have that now.
But here's another example of what you're saying, right? And then after this, I was gonna go to Hirozu. Like I don't watch Marvel stuff after Endgame. Like I was dragged to see Endgame. I was burnt out on Marvel stuff even before Endgame, but for whatever reason, my wife just wanted to see the Avengers movies. I'm like, why do you even want to see this? You never want to see this stuff. But I think they got so big, she just wanted to see what it was. So we went, and she didn't really understand what was like, happening because she didn't watch all the other movies and stuff. And I got like really burnt out. There was too much spectacle on the screen and too much clanging. I was like, I just can't take this
But
stuff
you also have
anymore.
to remember, you're not a normie, so like you consume a lot of material and like middle brow material that carries itself as highfalutin is incredibly exhausting if you
Yeah.
are also consuming like lowbrow and highbrow material. But for regular people who are just like watching This Is Us in the evening time and watching the occasional movie in the theater is not like I don't think they can really relate to the way that we consume content.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably that too. But
It's funny you say
go
that,
ahead.
Q, because yeah, what you said about like the way we consume content, it got me thinking about like your point that like there aren't so many movie reviewers anymore, and I genuinely think the medium in which people review movies is now best found on YouTube. Like I think
Right,
video
right.
essayists are the like number one source of that. And back in the day, it used to be like you'd hear a movie review on the radio, or it would be in between adverts when you're watching something on the television, or I don't know. If you're really lucky, you'd see it like printed in like newspapers. But like nowadays, I think
No, I
it's
mean,
completely moved
no,
away from
I
that.
think I think the newspaper and I think every major paper had a movie reviewer that would make a name by being well informed and
Mm.
ruthlessly critical of whatever movie. Even if they absolutely loved it, they would not be afraid to point out the shortcomings of the movie. So like a lot of people point to like Siskel and Ebert. I think Gene Siskel was actually a huge hack. He was
Agreed.
the most
I
garbage.
actually, yeah, I kind of agree.
Yeah, no, he was like him hitching his wagon to Roger Ebert was the best career move he ever made, and I think he died before people caught on to the fact that he was a hack. Um, and then Roger Ebert, I think because he released that book, Your Movie Sucks, people think that he was a lot harder on movies than he actually was. When in fact he liked that Ben Affleck Jennifer Lopez movie Geely. Like he really loved it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
His movie opinions are bad. He's a great writer, but his movie opinions are like often very bad.
Like he was, but the thing was, he was not afraid to like, to ruthlessly critique a movie. But then you had people like, you had like Eugene Shalitz, you had like Oh my god, there's like a bunch of names swirling around in my head that I have first names and last names, and if I put them together, they're going to be like mismatched. But what I'm saying is that like the Washington Post had their reviewer, the Chicago Sun Times had theirs, the New York Times had theirs. Even like the Toronto Star, like in Canada, like the Toronto Star and the Globe and Mail had solid reviewers, and I think that that's all gone the way of the dinosaur because people aren't reading movie reviews to find out what's good and not good about a movie. They're reading movie reviews to validate the decision to go and watch the movie that they already want to watch. They just want to be agreed with. They don't want to hear they don't actually want to like hear what's actually what could be improved about this movie. And that's translated actually translated. I should say that it has come like I think it germinated in Tumblr and young adult fiction, where people would read reviews from people that were also trying to be YA writers. So they're all like trying to be all like chummy and buddy buddy with each other. And if you like
Mm.
critiqued
Yeah.
a certain piece of YA fiction, then you were being like racist or ableist or whatever the fuck because this author,
But that person might not put you on
yeah, you
later
might,
because I'll give
yeah,
you an example. Damon Lindelof hires a bunch of his recappers to be his writers. A lot of
right,
his writers and Watchmen were his recappers. There was this woman that was regularly recapping and praising the show Insecure. I think her name was Ashley Ray or something. And she was a blue check that was always raving and writing fawning things about. And now she's managed by the same manager as Issa Rae.
right.
Um, what's her name? Chrissy Teigen. Somebody did a profile. Do you guys know about this story? Someone did a
Yeah, this lady
profile
did a
of Chrissy
profile on her,
Teigen.
and even before the profile was released, she had already been hired.
Yeah, it was a fawning profile, and then Chrissy Teigen hired this girl to be um to be the runner of her version of Goop. She was trying to do her own version, a lifestyle thing like Gwyneth Paltrow, and like you said, even before the piece came out. So that means that this girl probably ran it by Chrissy Teigen, and it was
Yeah,
so fawning that even before it came out, she already knew it was gonna be so good. And then she, without even having the sense of shame, she tweeted, "Hey guys, good news! This piece that I wrote got me hired for this thing." And then half the people were like, that's not a good thing. But what was interesting to me wasn't so much that she lacked the self-awareness to be ashamed of it, but that half the replies were like, "You go, girl, this is great." And then a lot of these other like blue checks who were women and POC were getting mad at the people who were critiquing her. They're like, white people do it all the time. And now you're just mad that a person of color, a woman of color, is now um, benefiting from cronyism. And I was like, oh my God, we
you're
are
not
so
supposed to admit
far gone.
that. Like,
Yeah.
you're not supposed to.
But they got upset. They got really upset. And the point that I was making about the Marvel Endgame stuff is actually ties into Q's point about reviews, right? It was way too big and clanging, and I'm like, I don't really want to watch any more Marvel stuff. I'm burnt out. But if they ever do something nice and quiet, I might try it again. Something like more grounded or whatever. So whenever those Disney Plus shows came out, I would just be curious and look for a review. And I just be curious, like, okay, is this going to be the one that's more grounded? Like, I want something more like that Winter Soldier movie. I thought that was kind of a cool movie, like that Bucky movie.
Yeah.
And I started realizing how bad reviews are. And this is goes to like the whole Tumblrization thing, where it's like a fan page. Like you
Yeah.
read a review, and there's no talk about themes. There's no talk about characters, but they talk about the show as if human beings didn't write it, and actors aren't acting. They act like these are their friends, and they're gossiping about them, and that these are like real people, and they talk about the characters like they're people, not a character that a screenwriter actually made conscious choices about. And they don't mention the screenwriters' names or anything, to the point that I think they don't even know or care about who actually creates the thing. They just act like they're catching up with old friends. And one example, right? IndieWire had this thing about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and I was curious. I'm like, I want to know if this show handles race well. I don't want to waste like 8 hours of my life watching a bad show. So let me try this review. And it says, The Falcon and Winter Soldier review. Episode 4 proves it's still all about Steve. And in parentheses, Rogers, right? and this guy writes this thing, and it's on IndieWire, and he goes on, and he's talking like these are his friends, and he's using everybody's first name for the characters. So he's just saying stuff like, Steve Rogers, the Jack Pearson of superheroes, was unflinchingly perfect. If he saw a situation pointed south, as in Captain America Civil War, he couldn't ignore it. It's what led to his dissatisfaction with the Stars and Stripes and his crossing of a patriotic Maginot Line. De facto leader of the Flag Smashers, Carly Morgenthau, finds herself in a very similar position. The world of the MC post blip is awful and unfortunately sounds a lot like our world, with income inequality growing more cavernous and government aid less reliable. During a mission to retrieve the rest of the super soldier serum, she and the other Flag Smashers stole from the power broker. Carly and one of her acolytes have a long conversation about Captain America, where her followers suggest she could be the new Cap as, quote, a leader who looks like them, who understands their pain. I'm like, wait, is this a recap or is this a review? Like, what is going on? But he's not explaining who anybody is. He's acting like this is the Tumblr fan blog and you've read every other installment and you're just jumping in. You know, I'm like, this should be a standalone review that explains this as if I've never seen a Marvel movie, tells me who wrote the thing, what these characters are, and the whole thing just goes on. Like, I'll just pick another paragraph. Zemo, no fan of super soldiers, is quick to remind Bucky and Sam, like he's talking about these people like they're his friends, that as awesome that as someone who was willing to take the super soldier serum, Cardi is a supremacist on a radicalized path. When Bucky states the serum never corrupted Steve, Zemo responds, touche. But there has never been another Steve Rogers, has there? And it's just like very gossipy and very weird, or very much like it's written for a fan blog, not a review. And every review I was finding to try to just catch up on this one dumb show, I could not find one that would just, review the damn thing like a normal person.
Two points about this. One, I think it was I think Lewis said earlier that he was kind of a bit immersed in that like MFA world. Writers talk about their characters in those terms too, as if they're not characters that they're writing, or they'll say something like, "I was so surprised that this character that I made up did this in the story," or that it came to me that the character would do this in the story. It's this weird, like they almost have like a parasocial relationship with like a person that they
Their
made
own
up,
characters.
like, the yeah. And the other thing is to go back to something that Q said a bit ago about the function of reviews. It's something that I think about a lot. And Q, you said something really good about how it's almost like people. It's almost like people read the reviews to feel validated in their interest in watching something. I would even go a step further and say that a lot of people read reviews to feel validated in the opinions that they had after having themselves watch the thing. Like they will go and watch the movie and then go read reviews and be like, "Oh, good, I felt the right thing. I had the correct response to that."
No, I mean,
I want to go one step further. I think they
myself.
do it to validate the feeling they had before they watch the thing. They know they're gonna love it before they even watch it.
No, okay,
That's all I was gonna say.
for like, I will say that I have definitely read movie reviews after I've seen a thing, but I do that because I want to know, hey, is there something that I missed? Like, I really like this movie, but in my liking the movie, is there something that I overlooked, or did I have like a thing that I felt a bad feeling, but I couldn't quite place what it was. Maybe if I go read some reviews, somebody else has felt that bad feeling and can actually put words to it. And I'll find like very rarely will somebody actually do the heavy lifting to demonstrate exactly what that shared bad feeling was. So like if I go ahead and look at John Semley's review for the Infinity War, um okay, here's what he says. Okay. Combining the power of the prize jewels called Infinity Stones, the thick-necked Thanos exterminates 50% of life everywhere across planets and star systems. It's a despairing bit of genocidal peacocking driven by that most desperate motivation, love. A less eager suitor may settle on concert tickets or a dozen red roses, but to woo death herself, Thanos delivers the decimated corpses of half the galaxy to her feet. So this is when he's talking about like the original Infinity Stone saga in the comics. It's equal parts tragic, monstrous, and sort of sweet, a cross between Antony and Cleopatra style Shakespearean tragedy, and a John Hughesian doe-eyed romance that reveals the preposterousness and exorbitant stupidity that enliven the best superhero comics. The comic entity Mistress Death is absent in Avengers Infinity War, the mega-budgeted Marvel Cinematic Universe blockbuster event, in scare quotes, that draws together a decade of world building and complicated franchise arrangements. Instead, Thanos is motivated by more purely Malthusian ends. His aim is to collect the stones, which have been scattered across Marvel Studios' existing superhero franchise films, in order to decimate the galactic populace. His aim is balance. He is, in his word, dispassionate. His madness is utterly, boringly conventional. And then he says later on, critics tasked with reviewing Infinity War were explicitly asked to not give away who dies and who doesn't out of respect for the filmmakers of these films and the legions of worldwide fans. To the last point, the manner in which studio financiers weaponize fans as a bulwark against critical volleys is truly pathetic. And I'm like, thank you. Finally, somebody
that's good.
fucking
That's great.
said it. Holy shit. Why did it take so in I saw this begin to happen with Iron Man, in that people when they would review the films would give away some plot details, and they would even say, because this was like during like the Mad Men era, right? So they would say things like spoilers abound, yada yada, and people, I think, read those reviews knowing that there would be spoilers ahead, and occasionally they would gripe about it on social media. But now we've gotten to a point where people will warn that there are spoilers in their movie reviews, and then people will still bitch about it. Like, they'll be so upset. Like, how dare you detract from my movie going experience? It's like, but I said there's going to be spoilers ahead. Yes, but you shouldn't reveal anything about this. Now to the point where like people have literally said that if you in your movie review spoil plot details, the studio should be able to sue you out of every penny you have. And it's like, when did
Even
did
if you
this shit
announce,
get
even
so,
if you announce you're gonna spoil it,
yes, when did this shit
that's
get
crazy.
so fucking bizarre? Like, it's a movie. They act like it's like some sort of like transcendent life event. So now, like, so what John pointed
Uh,
to in
mhm.
2018 has utterly come true, which is that the fans are now a, as he says, a bulwark against criticism, because if you don't want to deal with people uh dogpiling you for days on end about a movie that you didn't like, you have to like give it a soft-footed treatment. And the way that I know this is true is I've seen people do book reviews this way too, not spoiling parts of the plot, but they'll do this really weird thing that you can hear them preemptively defending themselves against people that are going to be mad for the criticism they're going to make. They'll say, Okay, I saw this in, I think it was like a Slate review of Ta-Nehisi Coates' book. I forget what the hell it was called. It was that bad. But
Between the between the
no,
world
no,
and
no,
me, or
no. His
Water
fiction
Dancer.
book, his first fiction book.
Water
Water
Dancer.
Dancer.
Yes, yeah. And a reviewer for I want to say it was Slate, uh, made a criticism of the book, and when she made that specific criticism, she said, it did so and so and so, and that's okay, with an like literally with an exclamation mark at the end of the sentence. So it's like, you have to let people down so gently who are reading the review, that you point out a part of the book that you found a little bit trite or hackneyed, and you say, "Oh, but that's okay. Like, it's okay to do this in books. Like, it happens all the time," with an exclamation mark on it. Like, I'm I'm really trying not to be attacked right now. And it's like, how cowardly are people right now that they can't even voice their like, if you have the knowledge and you have a background of information, like you have a repository of info based on all the books that you've read and reviewed and so forth, you should be able to compare what you've just read against all of the other works that you are aware of or that you have analyzed, and come to a conclusion. And now people are afraid to do that.
Q, you said earlier, as if these things were transcendent life events. I think the reality is that for a lot of people, these are transcendent life events. They are almost equivalent to like the birth of a child. They have been following, the journey of these movies to, creation over like 2 years. So they've been, reading all the blogs. They've been following all the PR. It is absolutely the catharsis of this like multi-year process. And I think that's deeply depressing, but it is what it is. So
Kurt, the reason why I said not even to be affirmed about what they thought after seeing the movie, but before, was the first time I really saw how bad a problem it was when the Dark Knight movie, the the second Nolan movie was about to come out. This guy in New York Magazine, I think his name was David Edelstein or something. I think that was his name. He wrote a negative review on it, and it was a very thoughtful negative review. It was for I believe it was for New York Magazine, not the New Yorker. And the movie didn't come out yet, and no one had seen the movie yet among the fans. And he got like death threats, and the comments to the article were insane, like thousands and thousands of angry, rabid "fu" comments. But these people all admitted they had not seen the damn thing, and I was like, and that's when I realized, like, these people making their mind that they love something before they even watch the thing. But these people end up becoming the writers, but they also are the modern audience. So it's like the people writing these views almost have to pander down to them. And I think, again, the problem of access is a consistent problem where everyone thinks if I might be the next one to get a job, I might be the next one to get picked. So or maybe I won't get picked, but maybe Marvel will stop sending interviews to my magazine, or maybe I won't get a swag bag or something from Warner. But basically, it's this kind of fear of not getting access or pissing off that kind of fan. Because in this day of precarious media ventures, who wants to have 1,000 or 2,000 people mad at you and not reading your stuff? That's a lot of clicks you could be getting. I also want to give Dexter a chance because we waited too long to get to our last caller and he disappeared. So I want to be better about that. So Dexter, please.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Lewis knows me, actually. I write under the name Dexter Bushatelli.
I just realized you're here, Dex. Hey, man.
Hi, Lewis. Newis, as we used to call him. We had another Lewis in the group before Lewis came along, so he was Newis for a very long time.
No one else is allowed to call me that.
No, actually, I've been listening for a few minutes, and T made a point about access that I do think is very interesting and piggybacks on what Lewis was saying as well about the landscape of criticism really has changed in a lot of ways, and the access to that criticism has changed. I mean, we are, as you guys have already said, a long way away from the days of, oh my God, Gene, you already said his name, and now suddenly I'm spacing it the same way that you were. Not Gene Siskel, although Siskel and Ebert, of course. Gene Shalit, thank you. But yeah, the idea of what criticism is and how respectable it is has changed a lot. And having done a podcast about comics and on a very small scale, nothing very big, but there's this view, this very antagonistic view towards a lot of those YouTubers who do have criticisms and put up videos about things that we are in some way not valid in our criticisms. We are not educated enough. We don't have enough credentials. We don't have enough accolades to our names. And I find that to be very troubling. But that is a double-sided coin at the same time, because you have a lot of these, quite frankly, chodes who have videos where they cut the heads off of Star Wars dolls or whatever and find that to be valid criticism. I think criticism needs to be balanced. We need to be able to look at the positives, the negatives, and weigh those things out. And that's something I'm not seeing across the board, whether it's in what is considered to be respected circles of journalism and criticism, or in these circles of YouTubers. That's a real problem. And in fact, the more salacious your criticism or critique is, the more popularity it gets because of the way that YouTube and their algorithm works. So we're in this weird position now where it's a lot better to say, oh, the new Star Wars films are SJW garbage. Or on the flip side of that, oh, the new Star Wars films are the boon of diversity and empowerment, and we're not really digging down and looking at the thematics, the writing, the production aspects, all of the things that actually should matter in valid criticism.
Yeah,
I always
I
like to talk
totally
about
agree.
the materialist aspect real quick is
Mhm.
in terms of access. I approve and reject pitches all the time, and if somebody comes to me with an interview and they've already got the interview lined up and they say, "Hey, I'll sell you this interview," I'm way more likely to accept that than if they have to get it. So, like, from a materialist standpoint, as the writer, there's real value in that, and then I'll shut up.
I'm extremely annoyed that one of my friends has come in here and said such an erudite point and embarrassed me when I'm supposed to be one of the speakers. But I absolutely agree. I love what you're saying, Dex, about how basically like everything has to be a soundbite. Like the content, yeah, the content of the video or the article you're going to read can already be summed up in the title, and you already know exactly what that type of person is going to say in the video. I cannot wait for the day that someone like The Quartering is like, "Oh, I've actually changed my mind. Captain Marvel 2 was actually quite good. You know what? It was quite progressive." It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. That man in society hates that before he watches it.
Oh yeah, I want to make clear when I talk about that, I find myself trying noxious reactionary YouTubers just to get some type of attempt at analysis. He is not one of them. He is dumb beyond belief. There is no redeeming anything to that guy because all he does is just, I swear, he just watches everyone else and then just dumbs down.
One-ups it and then makes his criticism twice as stupid. Yeah, and T, you and I have talked about this person, like somebody whose videos I actually really appreciate because he's like super self-effacing. Although I think some of the conclusions he comes to are kind of like hackneyed and it's like, all right, like I know that you're trying to impress your anti-SJW audience, but there are moments of real clarity in his reviews. Is Critical Drinker, this Scottish dude that reviews like comic book movies and like a lot of like fluffy pop culture stuff, but then we'll also go back and do deep cuts, like compare the original Tomb Raider game to like the Renaissance like PS3 and PS4 Tomb Raider games, or he'll go back and review Avatar, like the James Cameron Avatar, and called it like the the highest selling bad movie of all time. And he'll like he will rip these movies apart, but he'll do it in a very like he knows what plot structure looks like. He knows what character development is supposed to look like. He knows what a beat
He
is.
points out plot holes.
Yeah,
he points
yeah,
out really good plot holes
exactly.
that I miss.
Yeah, he'll talk about like, you know, the way that you're supposed to set up a scene, or what the way that foreshadowing is supposed to look like is you do it like this. And he'll point to, for example, like the movie Tremors, which came out, I believe, in like '88, right? So I can tell he's somewhere around our age, but he remembers his stuff well enough and has gone back and watched the material well enough to make, not just to say movies were better back then, but to explain exactly why, because they contained the necessary elements to make a good movie. And even though Tremors wasn't even that great a movie, I mean, it was really good, like, you know, fluffy popcorn movie. But then he'll compare it to Star Trek Into Darkness and then explain, like, they don't actually do foreshadowing. They just make the plot do whatever they need to make it do. And is
how dare you, sir? Not just in saying that Tremors is not a good movie, but your complete dismissal of the masterpiece that is M. Night Shyamalan's The Last Airbender.
No, not M. Night Shyamalan's, the James Cameron version. Oh God, The Last Airbender.
No. I know you mean James Cameron's Avatar, okay. But can I be the one to say Last Airbender? Not that bad.
Oh, get out of here!
Fuck off my collars right now.
Get out of here, man.
That has to be the most controversial thing said on this. I applaud your bravery, sir, with that one. One thing I wanted to say, I'm pretty much done. I wanted to give people the chance to say the last words, and also if any final callers want to come up, this is the time to do it. But one last thing I'll say before I'm done is Lewis, we found Lewis. The way we found Lewis, I think, is a perfect example of the Buzzfeedification and Tumblrization of media. In that, episode 414 of Champagne Sharks is about Simu Liu from Shang-Chi, and there was this thing happening where these Asian online feminists made Simu Liu into this basic. They made him into the Asian version
MRA,
of
yeah.
the Asian version of the men from Fury Road. Like he was just
He was one
enslaving
of the
women
war
and
boys.
chasing them down. Yeah. I mean, it was really over the top, stupid, and all these major outlets, all they were doing was just repeating the outrageous stories verbatim without fact checking them. They just said, and this is what the stories would be. The stories were just like, so and so on Twitter tweeted this, and then so and so tweeted this. It sounds really crazy. Then so and so tweeted this. Is this true? It's like, you're a fucking reporter. What?
Why don't you? Yeah, go look into it. Do actual research.
Yeah, if you imagine when Kamala Harris like tweet something like, "We need to raise awareness about this issue." It's like, bitch, you're a politician. What do you mean? Who do we raise it to? Like you're the one who's supposed to be who has the power to take care of this. Yeah. So Lewis was the only person who actually did the research and wrote this long piece documenting where the story started, how it was all made up, and just a giant game of telephone, and all the various conflicting interests happening that were behind it, and how it was just a bunch of crap. But all the other places were just, and the second time using this word, first time was Joe Lewis, but I think it goes for a lot of reporting, credulous. It's Joe Lewis, I mean Joe Rogan. People were being credulous and just printing everything at face value. They were just
Do you
saying,
mean
hey,
incredulous?
Oh, maybe I do mean incredulous. Is that how it is? What's the one where you just take everything at face value? Have I been messing it up this whole time?
That could go either way.
I honestly don't.
Say.
Oh no.
No, yeah, credulous means you believe everything you're told, right? Yeah.
Okay, then I'm wrong,
I'm
and
looking
he's
it up now.
absolutely
It says, yeah, having or showing too great a readiness to believe things.
My apologies. Then
yeah,
I corrected you on something that I was wrong on.
I'm just excited that the boxer Joe Lewis was the one who came up with this shit, man.
Yeah, you know what? I was thinking of Joe Rogan and Lewis Parker, and I combined it in my head.
That's what I almost did.
When I was talking
earlier.
Neil Young's gonna come after you, man. Don't say that.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, it went as far as people were saying that he moderated a message board dedicated to hunting down and bashing Black women, which they didn't even bother to say why he would do this, but they were just printing this stuff up. And Lewis was like the only one who did all this work, but he did it for his own Medium publication, not even for. But what is in it for somebody to take the time and research that when they're in the rush to beat everyone else to the story, and also in a rush to move on to the next story so they can get paid for that one as well.
Well, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, because we speak about how like all these like listicles and like these like big articles that are basically just like GIFs are like really easy for people to consume, but like long form media is dying and all that. The amount of people that were sent my article, which granted, I'll be honest, it was long, but the amount of people that were sent that, and it was tagged in people on people's posts, and they were like, I'm not reading that. It's too long. Like, I can't be bothered. Like, they would say stuff like, oh, Simu is like a racist, and like he hates women, and then like someone would like tag my article, and they'd be like, nah, that says that's a 10-minute read, so I'm not gonna read that.
Like, they were saying he was a pedo sympathizer. Like,
yeah. They were saying
they were trying to
it was
make
pretty funny.
anything stick to the dude.
Mm.
Yeah. And
how is this for a final question? What's on the screen now? And then we'll end it here. How much of this is a function of not properly teaching humanities?
Could I field the question actually? Even though I'm just
go
a
on,
caller?
Tex.
Sure. Go ahead.
Man, yeah, go on.
Well, before I do that, I just wanted to say, because you guys are covering final points, this Buzzfeedification idea that you're talking about, BuzzFeed is an outlet that actually has done a lot of really good, legitimate journalism, but they're also an outlet that's like really all over the place, kind of like this episode. It hasn't really been a solid topic from what I listened to.
We don't have anyone else to talk to about this shit, okay? It's been bottled up for too long.
That's okay. Again, I used to host podcasts. I know how it goes. But I actually was interviewed by Rachel Krishna of BuzzFeed over the whole Comicsgate. I know you guys mentioned that earlier. And unfortunately, what I actually said to her and what was printed in the article they couldn't be two different things, which was very disappointing to me. But, people can go and read that article. You just look up Comicsgate. BuzzFeed's the one that comes up, BuzzFeed and a few others. But that idea of Buzzfeedification, I think like that is a real problem that's going on. These outlets that don't really know exactly what they want to be. So they're trying to really just go in every direction. And yeah, some people may view some of that as like they're going for the woke crowd or whatever, but they're also doing a lot of other things too. The Daily Mailer and the Daily Caller are definitely guilty of that too. Like they're kind of in every direction. It's a real problem in journalism, and it's a broader conversation than we have time for with these final points. But the function of not properly. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Something else with the BuzzFeed thing. You're absolutely right that they used to do a lot of good reporting, but they gutted that whole section out because it was just not profitable enough, and they couldn't justify it to their investors. So even the good stuff that they did do that used to balance out the 15 gifts, it's all gutted, and they doubled up on quizzes and whatever. So it's kind of tragic. I mean, you are right, but it's unfortunately gone.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they got bought out by another company this past year, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I forget what they were even called, but that did happen. Yeah,
I forget what company it was. They were hoping that that's going to be a boon to things. Although I watched a video about College Humor earlier today and how they got bought out, and that was way early in their existence. That company was hoping for them to be more profitable. It unfortunately didn't happen. That company wound up pulling their funding, and College Humor now is apparently doing okay for the staff that they have, but they laid off like 100 people last year or a year before last, if I'm not mistaken.
So BuzzFeed went public in 2021 through a SPAC, which is basically like a public offering that doesn't require any kind of disclosure. So they weren't bought by anyone, but they are now publicly traded, which itself has its own kind of weird capital drivers upon corporate behavior. So yes, you are correct.
Sort of in the way that Vince McMahon now has to answer to all of the other investors that are involved in the WWE as it is.
Yes, exactly.
Is it called Complex Media or something they're partnered with now?
Complex.
I believe so.
Yeah, they do like a lot of like hip hop related news and that kind of stuff. It's like it's like the Vice news of like hip hop culture.
But they've also become like those other sites that Dexter was describing, where they're not into kind of everything. They're marginally hip hop now. They just kind of hop on anything they can.
I want to say something about the humanities point and kind of say something about what you touched on in terms of boosterism.
Cool.
Talking about the sort of the culture of echo chambers, the question of whether or not it's worse on the right than it is on the left, that sort of thing. One is videos of mentally challenged people scoring touchdowns. It's something I'm thinking a lot about. The other thing, I promise you it'll tie in. And the other thing I'm thinking about is a lecture that a man from Pakistan who was in a writing residency gave about Rakim. And I tell this story sometimes. For me, one of my most shocking and illuminating experiences, I worked for the International Writing Program briefly in Iowa City. There was a man who used to dress up in Run DMC retro outfits from Pakistan, who came from a lot of money, who'd written a book called Homeboy.
H.M. Nagvi, I believe. And he wanted to teach class on Rakim. Not a single white person in that building had ever asked me about hip hop. I'm from Harlem. My cousin's Cool Keith, kind of deep in the scene. No one ever wanted a conversation with me about it. They were in a rush to get this guy who was performing a sort of minstrelsy, like a distant version of hip hop, to talk about Rakim. He taught a class comparing Rakim to Shakespeare. He went out to the dive bar afterward. So happened that I used to work there and I had taken over the jukebox, put CDs in, and we had an extensive playlist of Rakim. I played it all. He knew none of the songs, right? What a lot of people on the left are seeking is a sort of titillation of saying they experienced a thing without being provoked by it. I used to associate this with the right. And this is why I'm going to agree that, yes, the right is worse, but that I'm going to say I don't care about that, because that feeds their purposes. On the left, it's worse that we've adopted that sort of approach to things. The popularity of the mentally challenged person scoring a touchdown has skyrocketed in the last decade. It drives me crazy. It's never about the child who's being cheered on. It's easy to retweet. It's a way that we affirm our decency ever being challenged to form an opinion or critical thought. Our art is becoming that, right? It's really scary. When the left starts to turn into this sort of echo chamber that has purity text, we get this artwork, these musicals. We get Amanda Gorman, who's the equivalent of a mentally challenged person scoring a touchdown as everyone waves their arms.
Is he calling Amanda Gorman Rudy? Oh, Jesus Christ.
She's writing in the New York Times pieces of self-advertisements of nothing but platitudes and hearing. Now, real good art forces you to think. It leaves you with a complexity of afterthought. It challenges you. It doesn't affirm you. You might feel uncomfortable when you receive it, right? There's not as much room for that anymore. That scares me.
If I can, Jason, I don't disagree necessarily with what you're saying, but the language with which you're presenting this and using buzzwords like echo chambers and platitudes and virtue signaling.
I didn't say virtue signaling and platitudes.
You did say the word virtue
it's signaling. A word.
But no, I mean, I think that kind of hurts your case a little bit. Like, yes, I get what you're saying, but I don't know, man. We should be celebrating those things, of course, but you're saying that we're celebrating those things not on the merit of their individual accomplishments, but because it is something that we can make political, basically.
Yes, I am saying that we cheer for mentally challenged people scoring contrived touchdowns on football fields, not because of the experience that person has, but because it is the one thing that can make us signal other people that we're decent without us actually stating any complex or challengeable opinion.
Can I tell a funny
moral courage?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but can I tell a funny story, actually? I don't know how much time you guys have. It's a Bobcat Goldthwait story, if that makes it any better.
Only if you do it in his voice.
Go ahead.
Bobcat Goldthwait was on a plane a few years ago, and it had engine trouble and actually went into free fall. And I mean, they righted themselves, but it was a moment of like, I think I'm going to die. Oh my God. And he tells the story in a stand-up. And when he tells the story, he says, this part, I'm going to lose some of you in the audience, but I'm asking you to please stay with me for a moment. He says, we righted ourselves. The captain comes on. He says, we're going to be making an emergency landing here in Georgia. On the runway, when we get there, there's going to be foam. And at the end, there's going to be a fire truck. The important part of this story is most of the Special Olympics team for the U.S. was on the plane with him. So when the captain says, there's going to be a fire truck at the end, somebody behind Bobcat Goldthwait says, fire truck? And Bobcat Goldthwait says, I was thinking in this moment, like, oh my God, I'm going to die. Like he's thinking about his family, his friends, his career, all of that. And he says, I know when you think about people who are special needs, and everybody has somebody in their life that they know that is that, it's very easy to get offended when people make jokes about that. But the thing is, if you get offended when people make jokes about those people, you're not looking at them as human beings. And this guy said, fire truck. And he was so excited to just see a fire truck. And to me, that was the funniest fucking thing a human being had ever said. And again, like if you don't think they do and say things that are funny, you're not looking at them as human beings. And so that story has stuck with me because I have people like that in my life. And I'm a hairstylist by trade, by the way. So I interact with people of every walks of life, you know, kids with autism and kids who have Down syndrome and everything at all. And fire truck just sticks in my head all the fucking time. And it's one of the funniest fucking things I've ever heard.
I feel like part of this I might be a little bit too British to understand. You guys are talking about like disabled kids scoring touchdowns. Over here, we just let our prime minister rugby tackle children. I don't know if you've seen any of our videos online. The funny thing is, she's done it twice.
I feel like somebody who does Boris Johnson's hair has to be special needs. I mean, that's just my opinion. I feel the same about Donald Trump, don't get me wrong, and Joe Biden for that matter.
I think his mother does it with a bowl.
Thanks everybody for joining us. Unless anybody has any final points.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought this was about
Okay.
writing.
Real quick, I don't know that teaching humanities better or different would have any particular effect, because I think that the driver is the market driver. It's where you can make money either as a company or as a writer is by doing certain things. So just, you know, I think that it's ultimately what is incentivized by where you can get money instead of how we teach things. So
I think,
Okay.
unfortunately,
Oh, sorry, I took him out. Hold on. Can you come back? Can you come back to the queue? Because I was wrapping up, so I didn't know you were going to speak again. Dexter, you can feel free to come back to the queue. Okay, cool.
I just realized this question, how much of this is a function of not properly teaching humanities? We've spoken about like 50 different things. I don't know exactly what he's referring to. Does he mean BuzzFeed, like the Buzzfeedification things, or like we're speaking about
I
Dave
think so.
Chappelle for a long time there?
No, I think this general whole trend of what we're talking about of people not. I would say probably a good example of what he's probably talking about is people not wanting to read your article because it said 10 minutes to read up front.
I don't know about teaching more humanities, but I think we should have more mandatory internet technology classes, at least in Britain. I don't know about you guys in the States, but yeah, no.
you're talking to the wrong person. I'm almost 40.
hey, I'm almost 40.
He says
well,
he responded all of it, that movie reviews, etc. Okay, well, you know what? It's late here on the East Coast, so I'm going to stop it now. But thanks everybody for joining us. Appreciate it, everybody who joined it. And do us a favor. This app allows you to make clips. So by all means, make clips, share clips of your favorite parts of this when you listen to it. I should have announced that up top because that would have been better. But Q, do you have any? You're more versed with this app than I am. Is there anything people should know about making clips? I have yet to make a clip.
No, if you're listening to this and you thought that there were like funny moments or like somebody said something really intelligent or should be highlighted, just use the scissor tool, which creates highlights. Clip the audio, and either if you want to like tweet it or send it to us, that would be great, because the more that we're able to boost highlights of the show, the longer the show is going to stick around for. So, T, is it okay to let people know what's going on with you, or should we wait until that's all settled?
Oh no, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, as soon as you bring it up, then you might as well say it because I hate teasing.
So no,
go ahead.
I'm the one that has a deal with Colin. Like, I've been very transparent about that. Colin signed me back in November to produce content, and I introduced T to the call-in team, and apparently he's very close to putting together a deal as well to do sponsored content. And because there's no monetization right now, what they have to know is that the shows are viable. So I started like the call-in, like the Champagne Sharks product obviously belongs to T, but I created the space and handed it over to him so that he would be able to essentially like create the rooms and invite people here and create what essentially would be a long-term viable product. So in order to show that it has support and that you want to see more, what we need to see is a couple things is that one, people come into the room, and that two, people are actually listening to the show. So if there's something funny or interesting that you found about this recording or any of the previous recordings, like share it with people. And if there's moments that you really liked, just clip it and share that with us so that we can share it on social media as well.
Yeah, that's an important thing. If you do make a clip, by all means, tag us and we will retweet it. You could tag at Champagne Sharks, but also like put it in other places too, like Instagram, Facebook. You know, I feel like Twitter is like diminishing returns at this point because I feel like
The Twitter algorithm,
everybody's
like,
gonna follow me. Follow.
no, well, it's not just that. It's also like the way the Twitter algorithm works is that there's like entire swaths of people, like there's whole demographics that'll never see you. So we're trying to like push it also on like Instagram, Facebook, etc. But the best things to do really is like make a clip and then tag us in it so that we can share the moments that you find funny. And also, if there are people that you want to see on the show, we were even like some of the YouTube creators that we talked about tonight, even some of the reactionary ones, we were going to invite them on and have a conversation to like, go back and forth on media criticism, etc. So if there are people that you would like to see, um, feel free to like hit us up, shoot us a DM, and let us know who you'd like to have come on the show as well.
If you guys get the coring on,
What's that?
What was that? Is it the quartering?
Yeah, if you guys get him on, get me back. Send me a message.
That's a bridge.
This way they got
That's
a podcast.
That's
a bridge too far. I think the furthest I would go is
you were okay, but you were suggesting Ethan Van Sciver, right?
I just want to say that my beard is better than Jeremy Hambley's. First off,
I used to have.
I feel like it's a low bar though.
Yeah,
it is a low bar. I'll give you that.
Okay, everybody. Thanks, and yeah, share the clips, tag us at Champagne Sharks, and tell your friends, get more people, because yeah, basically we have to show them that this is a viable space over the next couple of months. So yeah, the more people that get in here, the more people that share this, because they'll be looking at the social media activity as well. It really helps us out. So we definitely appreciate that. And we'll be doing more of these per week, but shorter. Like we only do one, so we let it go long, but we'll be doing more of them shorter than instead of one long one like this. And thanks everyone who joined us. You guys have been very patient. You could have been anywhere, but you were here. We appreciate it. And be good, everybody.
Thank you.
Peace.